All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the REMINGTOM Pod. It is the Sunday night edition of the REMINGTOM Pod. We've got basketball on in the background. Hey, yo, I mean, it's been a long time, and I don't even think it's been barely a month, but it's been a minute for the degenerate basketball fan. I guess, it's like how many basketball games can we have, live basketball games at one time? But we do have a little WNBA on in the background right now, moving into center stage in the NBC Sports lineup right now, the Peacock lineup. We got Fever versus the Aces. So just a little, NBC Sunday Night Basketball. It's just good vibes, chat. Hey, good to have it back. But the Spurs are also playing in Summer League right now. So with the way the finals turned out, hey, speaking of the finals, they're advertising finals like shirts and stuff right now as well too. Hey, we have to look away. But with the way that turned out, I mean, we forgot to put the Wemby jersey up as well. I guess it's sitting off screen for this one. It is what it is. But what are we saying? We have to see San Antonio get a win. We have to see them look. I'm sure they'll go up by 30 in this Summer League game and then lose. It is what it is. The Spurs starter should have to play at least one Summer League game, just as, I don't even know if you say a punishment, but just as a way to lock back in, chat. Hey, yo. I mean, how many times are we going to say it? Basically every episode of the summer. But again, it's this. Do you say only the Spurs fans think that we should have won the title? Maybe only the Spurs fans go that far with it. Drawing that much of a conclusion. Hey, yo. But what both teams did have the lead in every game. I'm trying to think how many finals would that actually have happened in? I'd be a little bit of a research project there. Hopefully the rest runs slow this week, I guess. But, how many finals did... And I guess just in general as well, too. Like we've said, the losing team having the lead in every game. But I guess, both teams having the lead in each game. I guess, did New York have the lead in the game that San Antonio won? I guess is... So what we're basically thinking is, what we just said, is did the losing team have the lead in every single game? Because San Antonio did, and for us that means we should have won the finals. If you had the lead, that means you have the opportunity. I say the ability. I guess the Spurs, clearly we did not have the ability to close it out. I can't say we did, because we demonstrated time and time again that specific version of the Spurs team, do you say roster construction, whatever, but, also where those guys are at in the timeline. Like, that version of the San Antonio team, clearly not capable of closing out those games, but, the opportunity was there. So as long as the opportunity was there, maybe that has to mean something. But like we just admitted, we don't have the ability to close it out, so what does it even matter? I don't know. Maybe we needed to admit that to ourselves? I don't know. And we've got, chat, Corliss Williamson coaching the Summer League team. I mean, iconic, of course, basketball player. I mean, maybe a little bit more, do you say pedigree in the NCAA run there? But, regardless, still iconic, basketball career all the way throughout. And the Spurs, San Antonio, the San Antonio Spurs Summer League head coach is like a pretty good omen for just your future in the coaching ranks, because I want to say that basically everybody that's coached the Spurs Summer League team has gone on to be like a legitimate head coach at some point. Like again, speaking of, how many times does that happen? Like how many teams could you say that for? And I know we could list off the ones that, have, and obviously, forget the ones that didn't there, but I'm trying to think if there would have been any gaps in the timeline for the names that I'm thinking of. I don't know. Did Udoka ever coach the Summer League team? I don't know if he ever did, but I know Becky Hammon coached the Summer League team. I mean, Mitch Johnson, coaching the Spurs team right now, coached the Summer League team. Will Hardy coached the Summer League team as well. So, I'm trying to think. There has to be another one in the run there. I guess, Corliss Williams now. We'll see. Hey, do we have to look up what's the history of Spurs Summer League head coaches? Let's see. Does anybody have a list out there that we can look up? I guess somebody's going to give us it's going to just be the coaching staff. So we might need to say, pause head coaches and see what we can find out here. Yeah, shout out again. We got, obviously Corliss Williams going for the Spurs, Spurs coaching job now. Yeah, Becky Hammon, she did coach. They won the Summer League title with Becky Hammon. Jonathan Simmons, iconic Summer League team. Hey, yo. But yeah, I guess it might be a little more. Well, I guess we could just find Spurs Summer League rosters. Is there any way that the Spurs Summer League rosters like have their own Wikipedia page? We could just go back through the teams and see. Hey, yo, if there was, I think there might be a sneaky page on the Basketball Reference, but I don't know if it might be too difficult to find. But I feel like I have saying, well, maybe I've seen G League stats is what I'm thinking of on there. Because I remember after we drafted Lonnie Walker and he was like playing a lot of G League games. How do I find these G League stats? Hey, yo, can I watch these games? But yeah, I don't think they have Summer League stats here on the Basketball Reference. So, yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to, off of memory, that's all we got, chat. Unfortunately, we can't be the ones trusted to remember the Spurs Summer League history there. But, again, that's those three within the past, and Becky Hammond is within the last 10 years. So it's not like, typically, it's not like, okay, Becky Hammond, 5 years coaching the Spurs Summer League team. Typically that's 1 to 2 years. But, still, again, that's still a pretty good percentage, at least, of coaches that would have had that outcome happen for him. And all of those are, again, those are not just, again, head coaches. Those are all like super high level coaches as well, too, because you have Becky Hammond winning titles in the WNBA, Mitch Johnson making the finals this year with San Antonio. And like I said, Will Hardy, has definitely seemed like it definitely seems like he could be the one to help continue to build that Jazz team out as well. It's obviously seeming like it's a really talented team. I guess, is Darren Peterson going to trend to be like that real franchise cornerstone? Obviously his scoring, like I said, locked in. It's pretty scary right off the start. So we're not saying that in a doubting way. It's just, we're throwing the question out there as a storyline. But, again, it does seem like because the Utah has Will Hardy at head coach, they are set there a little bit. Like they don't need to, it doesn't seem like they're in like a, I don't want to use his name again, chat. Hey, the Golden State timeline has been used too many times as an example. It is what it is. But, it's not like he's in a, will they need to maybe look to upgrade? I guess we don't know that yet, but it does seem like there is positive vibes there for Will Hardy as a head coach. And I guess we could just assume that Udoka probably did at some point. And again, obviously, maybe he's not as... again, if we say this respectfully, maybe he's not as highly viewed just in the head coaching ranks. I think he still is viewed as a top coach, but there was a time there when it was like, oh, is like Udoka going for the best coach in the league at some point. But I guess, I don't know if, it ever got quite like that, but he was definitely in the top there when he was paused, when it was going for him. Hey, what was he at the top for? Hey, but, whoa, hey, when he was coaching the Boston Celtics in the finals. We finally got there. It is what it is. Won the championship during 2014. It was a key for LaMarcus Aldridge's decision to join in 2015, as they were teammates during Aldridge's rookie season. I guess it doesn't explicitly say on his Wikipedia page. It's not like a highlight of his career. And Udoka also coached the summer league team. But I guess it probably might. It might say it listed as a fact. But then he did go to Philly as well. Then Brooklyn, then Boston hired him from Brooklyn as the head coach there. And, again, Houston, maybe it's just some of the roster stuff as well, but, we'll see player development with Amen Thompson. They're going to get Van Fleet back, at least, as a contract as well, too. And as a, again, a really, really good point guard that they probably could have used last year, definitely being a little bit of a weakness of the team, getting all the scores and sort of the forwards, organized there offensively. But, yeah, again, Corliss Williams, maybe on a head coaching track here. I don't know if he's just gonna get hired up right away. Do we have to maybe there needs to be like a coaching draft. That would be interesting if you could draft like assistants from other teams. I don't know if you would do it every year, every 5 years. Pause. Like how would that would work? And then, again, it's just like whenever the assistant decides, and I guess. Do you have like a whole line of head coaches? Because maybe, I guess we would still need to figure out how the logistics of that would work. Because, again, for at least, I know the NBA, it's more limited than, say, the NFL in terms of roster spots, but there at least are multiple roster spots. Like, I guess it would just be a more limited draft, right? 32 head coach. So it'd be a little bit like the supplemental draft. You may not have to have it every year. If every team has a draft rights assistant, is this even making sense anymore, chat? But I think it is. We just want another summer, another summer sports program to watch. Hey, we're just like pretending to be an ESPN executive. Like, what summer programming can we have? Hey, yo. I mean, they have ESPN the Ocho every now and then. They just like, let's just have a whole week where we just have fake sports. And then that'll be a week. So, we can have can we have an assistant coach draft and just draft like, future rights for assistant coaches or, other coaches out there as well too. Again, we don't want to like just automatically assume like, oh yeah, that, but the NBA kind of does that with players as well too. But the players do have to put their names into the draft pool. So like, I'm thinking like, can the Spurs just draft Becky Hammond's, NBA? But it would just be the NBA right specifically. So just be like, okay, if she wants to coach in the NBA, the Spurs drafted her number 4 overall, and we did good in the coaching draft lottery as well too. They're like, what lottery can the Spurs keep winning? We got like I guess she probably still like a top. We might need like the number 1 or 2 pick. I can't think of any other NBA assistants, but we just need to lock in more on that. I guess Corliss Williams now, but get more locked in on the assistant game for the NBA. So Becky Hammond might just be the number 1 in general for head coaches, or like I guess maybe like Van Gundy or something like that. I don't know if Van Gundy goes 1, Becky Hammond 2. Like what the what's the specific order there? But again, it's like, okay, if Becky Hammond wants to go to the NBA, then the Spurs have the NBA coaching draft rights. I guess, does that mean they have to get rid of the coach they have at the time as well too? Again, we still need to work out what the logistics of that would be. So, again, it can't just be like a one-fold move. I guess, if a player wants to go to the NBA, they still technically kind of have to cut a guy, but you can have the situation where contracts expire as well too, and you just don't re-sign. Roster spots will open up that way. So it's not like middle of the season, which I'm sure has happened before. But it's not like typically, you acquire a guy's draft rights the middle of the season. You don't have to bring a guy in. But still, teams make moves in the middle of the season all the time. So, it's not, players, obviously that dynamic is, in conversation with how, the what do you say, the treatment, if we could say the word transactionally in the league, how the player, player empowerment era and all the different stuff. But what are we saying for, so maybe it's a work in progress still, the assistant coach draft at this point. Oh, they're showing DeBasta highlights, chat. They did show him hitting a 3. So that's good. We saw on the one stat line that we saw last time, I don't think he hit a 3. He was like 0 for 5. But a little hezzy chat. Oh, he faked the 3-pointer. This is against Sacramento. So, do we have to take it with a grain of salt? I don't know. Blocking a cuff on the jumper. I mean, shout out. That's not obviously a cuff point there, but that's just, good defense for DeBasta. That's a matchup for him anyways. If he's going to force a cuff into a jumper there, then yeah, this was tonight's game. So he was 23 for 6 for 15 from the field. So, hey, we're going to have to do a little box score check here in a second to see what is going on. But we do have to address the sporting event of last night, chat. Hey, it is what it is. It is definitely one of the crazier things to see. And, I'm not going to lie. Like, I obviously haven't been, we haven't been mentioning the UFC as much on the live stream the last couple years because we haven't been watching it as much because, it has aligned with things that we just don't like with what they've aligned with. And to align with the right that aggressively as a sports league, it's just like, it just makes it just a little uncomfortable, like watching those games. So it's like watching those events, I feel like I'm participating in something else outside of the sport itself. And, I feel like a lot of times too, the separating of the sports and politics, obviously the NFL and the NBA have had their conversations there, differently at some points as well. But, there maybe are some things where it's just like, if you were asking us as a sports fan, I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, we're trying to be up here on the moral high ground. I'm just telling you where I'm at as a viewer, like just personally me going to Paramount and it's like the access is there as well too now. Like obviously back in the day, it was like the effort to go to watch a pay-per-view card. And there was something about that as well too. I don't know if we need to, again, I'm sure the access is good for the UFC at this point. And, we'll get to the fighter contracts here in a minute. Like some of that stuff is good, I guess in the logistics of the sport for them to be making a little bit more upfront as well. But there was like a community factor to the pay-per-view that I think did help watch that type of stuff. Again, on the other end of it, it does maybe, hurt it sometimes where it's like, if it's not the main prime time type of pay-per-view and, it's not like they're adjusting it. It's like, okay, this pay-per-view is only 20, which maybe there would have been like a, a case for that at some point as well. I was like, this pay-per-view is like 19.99, and then the main pay-per-views, like, or the, what are they typically, like $40, $50 back in the day for some of the UFC ones. But at least for our friend group anyways, it was that effort of like, okay, if we want to watch this pay-per-view, it's going to make more sense for us to watch it together here, economically. But then, you get the byproduct of the, I guess, our friend group are using each other to watch UFC events. We've still been, we've, hot take, we managed to stay friends since the UFC pay-per-views have, gone away. It's not like, oh, wait a second, that was the anchor there. But it, in terms of watching the sport, that anchored us watching that sport, was us having to get together to watch those things. So, again, I guess I don't know where the UFC stands with that as well too. I'm sure, they're doing fine or whatever. But I guess it's just an interesting thing I'm thinking about as, I'm thinking about the access again to just throwing it on, because that was the reason that I did end up throwing the McGregor fight on last night. I was out all day and then got home and I was like, okay, let me see where it's at. Like, cause again, even, talk about difficulties watching things, McGregor as well too. It's like, let's just do the double combo of McGregor and the UFC and like, let's just get it all out of the way. Hey, again, obviously, not every, person that you're a fan of in your childhood is obviously, and, you start getting into the news stories and the narratives as time goes on. You're like, wait a second, I start deleting the news apps from my phone here. And then it's like, no, actually, you got to grow up and start making, wise choices in the places that you place your fandom in. But, we were interested, obviously, in the McGregor Holloway storylines. So I was able to turn it on right when McGregor was walking out. So I was like, okay, I was like, of course we sit down for this, perfect timing. And then we also queued up on the second little TV over here as well too, the World Cup Argentina game, which we'll also get to in a second. But of course, McGregor does the walkout, Holloway does the walkout. It does seem crazy, but I will say as well, and again, obviously, with the way that the fight ended up turning out and the sort of craziness of it, like, I don't know if you can just start making up things going into the walkout and stuff. I'm not saying like, oh, because they did show a highlight or later, and I guess, skipping ahead, spoiler alert, obviously McGregor, blowing out his knee early on, but right away into the fight. But, they did show a highlight in the walkout of him, like, oh, was there a moment where like he twisted his knee, like getting out of his shoe or something like that? But I will say that I don't know. And it, again, like we're saying, we can, be open and honest about our previous, and, again, he was one of those guys that was, influential in driving eyeballs to the UFC. So it's not like, hot take, people were watching McGregor back in the day, but, we'll just try to implicate everybody with us, I guess, is how we're doing now, chat. I don't know. But, again, having watched a lot of McGregor back in the day, the same sort of fire that he would approach the initial fights, which he just didn't have it in this fight. I mean, again, I could almost just go throw the, 2-minute fight back on. Hey, chat, McGregor couldn't last 2 minutes. I mean, where are the jokes there? But what are we saying for just him walking out and sort of seeing it in his eyes and the approach and just the ferocity? Because again, it's not like him, even if he was walking out calm in a fight and that was going to be his approach, he's like, I'm not actually going to do much on the walkout or anything, I'm just going to be the intense fighter this time. There was just, again, a level of intensity, like literally that he was just I don't know, just the steroids or whatever. And I mean, we could get to that with the injuries as well. I don't know, we haven't done the research there, but I mean, I think that's been a little bit of a rumored, theorized thing in the Conor McGregor storylines there. But what are we saying for just that fire that he used to have, which, again, for better or worse, started to get him, it was the thing that had people cheering against him in some of those later fights. And you had, Khabib and his approach, the, cerebral, locked in, the disciplined fighter, and, just the contrasting styles there. And, again, just sort of his flamboyant approach to the UFC community. I think there was a little bit of that. It is McGregor a little bit, I guess, again, we tread lightly. We're just talking about the the careers that they're having. But is McGregor like the Drake of UFC, where I don't know if like every, hardcore UFC guy respects him, but it's like, okay, you can understand what he did for driving the popularity, and he was a really, really good fighter as well, too. Like, he won some championship belts, but, he's not going to like, he's not the first name you mentioned for greatest fighter of all time, even though you would look at his achievements, and his achievements would be aligned with a lot of the greatest fighters. And, again, that is some of the I guess to go against the Drake comparison, to give Drake a little bit of credit here. Hey, Drake, a more well-rounded, musical artist than McGregor is a fighter, because, and, maybe if McGregor had stayed in his weight class and worked on his wrestling, I guess there is that whole case there as well. That'd be like if Drake was like, I'm actually just going to fully drop a country album, I guess. Because, like, even, Beyonce's album, it wasn't necessarily a country album. It's more like a country-themed album, more so than it being like, a country album. Again, very, very influenced in a lot of different genres, for sure. But, the idea of blending genres itself is, implemented throughout. Obviously, we're referencing Cowboy Carter as well. I'm thinking, if Drake goes into the country, it may be more like Big X the plug it did with his album, because he actually collabed with a country guy. I forget who he collabed with for that one, because, again, shout out to our guy Big X, but, he's got a couple other albums that maybe is in the rotation for us. Maybe not that one, though. When we were out and about yesterday hanging out, again, being in the Midwest, there's going to be a lot of country playlists going. So when Big X does, maybe that is clutch for us. Maybe we need to do need to fire that one up, because that is like, obviously, he's very recognizable as well, too, when he drops in the track. So there was a couple times that I was like, oh, Big X, okay, at least we got some familiarity here for the country crossover. But what are we saying for, McGregor, I guess, going up through the different weight classes and stuff, like, again, that is going to be different as well, too, his ability to not just like, generate power and stuff like that, but to, like, take contact from the other guys and stuff, just a whole different thing once you start, moving up into different, again, I guess, scientific weight classes and stuff like that. But for, again, just like I'm saying, the approach going into the fight was concerning. So, I didn't know that he was going to lose less than a minute into the fight. And I didn't even realize that Holloway was like a minus 300 favorite as well, too, until we were hanging out, and the people, and some of the guys we were hanging out with were like, oh, we got to try to bet on this fight real quick. And they pulled up the odds, and he was like, wait a second, Holloway's like minus 325. I was like, oh, geez. Like, I thought he might, win the fight. Again, he's been the more active fighter. He's, like, in his, been winning and stuff recently. McGregor just being back from injury, it just seems like a little bit of a tough get-back fight, for sure. But, again, for him to be that heavily favored, I think he was minus 135 on the TKO. So if you cash that one less than a minute in, that's quite the bet there, which I was like, again, it seemed like a good bet, because, again, McGregor's not going to wrestle, and it doesn't seem like either of those guys are going to want that fight to get to decision. They both are just have chaotic fight styles. So if you're leaning Holloway, just to almost do a pseudo money line bet, of course, at the TKO for minus 135, retroactively, we're telling you retroactively, it would have been a good bet, but still that would have been the smart play there, because I think that's what would have ultimately a cash. It doesn't matter if he tears his knee or not. Like, it is what it is. If he tears his knee in the fourth round, it's tragic, but you're like, oh, at least we got to fight at that point. Again, the tragic part is, I guess, a knee being torn in some ways. But, again, there's some of the McGregor stuff there as well, too. But some of the karmic stuff. But what are we saying for the fight entertainment value of, I guess, the bummer part is obviously where it happened in the fight. But I was concerned odds-wise, where the fighters were at in their timeline-wise, and just, again, watching the approach going into the fight, just didn't seem like he had the same sort of fire that he normally had. And maybe I haven't watched, his more recent fights when he's been losing, but especially, you go back into his prime. Like, it was like, okay, this is definitely a different version of him. And he even tried doing some of the flaunting stuff when he got into the arena as well, too. And, I don't know, maybe his knee was already torn. So he's like, okay, he's like, oh, I can't really push off. I can't celebrate the way I want to. But it just didn't seem like he had the same sort of just intensity that it typically brings to the table. And then, of course, the fight starts. The jump attempt itself, and again, I don't know if this goes to the knee tear, because it might have been the second, but he fell on both of them, which, of course, the first fall was weird as well, which, again, if he doesn't tear his knee, it was like, okay, was that just, the surface obviously being weird. Does the surface being slippery have anything to do with the fact that the knee tore when it did? But I do kind of also think that it was just a little bit of a lazier jump attempt. Again, I'm not the mechanics guy over here. I guess who's a movie mechanic, Chad? I can't think of a good movie mechanic. I was like, call me whoever is a good movie mechanic. I guess what was I just had on? Oh, I threw on the beginning of Marathon Man because I was listening to that on the rewatchables. I was like, hey, I'll do a little listen along here, real quick. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, I have stuff to go do. So I watched the first couple of minutes of that, but that starts off with like a car situation. There's like a road rage situation, and a guy's car breaks down in the middle of the road, and it looks like it's like, okay, is the cut away to the hood slamming down, like them repairing the car, but it's like, okay, the hood slamming down cutaway is to this other shop, and this mechanic's there. So I guess we could be that mechanic. I don't think he's just like some extra, but either way, we're not the mechanic over here breaking down UFC technique. But, it didn't seem like it was the same. Again, Jose Aldo flying knee. It just seemed like he was going. Maybe he had studied that. But the thing about Aldo was he was talking going into the whole conference about, of course, how he knew exactly what he like. There was a schematic confidence that he had, as well as his physical fight ability and just his own just personal confidence in where he was at that time. But it did seem like, again, he legitimately had telegraphed in a way what Aldo was going to do. And of course, fortunately, Aldo actually did it, walked right into it, and it worked out great for him. It didn't seem like the effort or, again, the game plan was there for him to be like, okay, let me go in and throw this high kick as the first thing. And then it was honestly the second time as well that he threw it that made me think that was, again, almost like a little bit more of a gimmick, like an early fight gimmick to try to get this over with than like we're saying the Aldo fight was more like, I've unlocked this secret. Like I know what the game plan is. It's like Belichick in the Super Bowl against the Bills, AO for the Giants. I was trying to remember what the correct matchup was there, which, again, for all of the efforts that he had against the Patriots, it's like that might kind of be still the one like apex mountain coaching effort. I guess the Rams Super Bowl is up there as well too. We might have to go back and revisit that one, but I think the way they shut down that Bills offense as well. And I mean, they have Lawrence Taylor, so you have the greatest defensive player of all time, definitely going to help out as well. But, and the greatest coach, so I mean, what a combo. Hey, yo. But, yeah, either way, again, that's like a game plan thing that really, really worked out for him there. This seemed more like an early fight gimmick, try to get the fight over with, try to be flashy, try to do something cool early on. And, again, obviously the plant, and you can kind of see as well, too, when they do the replay that there is like a tension on the knee. It's not the same sort of thing as like watching the Achilles tear, because we have seen that now enough. And especially, I'm sure we've referenced this one before, but Chris Conley, Chiefs receiver, I don't even remember what year this was, maybe like 18, 19, something like that. But Chris Conley was on the Chiefs at this point, and I want to say it was maybe like an onside kick or a squib kick or something like that. It was some sort of weird special team situation because he had like a lane to score a touchdown when he got the football, because he recovered like a onside, because that's why he was planning the way that he was in the clip that I'm imagining here. This Chris Conley highlight that I'm poorly describing, but it's him fielding a kickoff. So, again, instead of him like running down the field underneath a catch, the way that you do the receiver, he's planting to, grab the football and then, drive up the field. And when he plants, after he gets the football, he plants to go up the field, and you just see this ripple through his calf. It's like, oh, well, I guess there goes the Achilles tendon. And maybe some NBA, calf stuff. I think maybe Halliburton had that as well too. Or was it Tatum? One of those Achilles injuries had the same sort of thing where you saw the pop in the calf, and it was like, oh, now, we're really starting to get some evidence here of what this is. But, it wasn't the same. We haven't like had that with ACLs where there's like a, I guess obviously not say like a grotesque version of it. I guess there have been obviously grotesque knee injuries that would involve an ACL tear. But for a knee tear, multiple ligament tear specific injury, again, there can be the plant version of it where you don't necessarily see the tendons, you don't see something visible on the knee in a major way right away. But there was a sort of, but there was a tension, like I'm saying, like you did see his muscles really flex on the outside of his knee when they showed that replay. So it was like, okay, I could see where that could be a muscle tear there. But I got to be honest, when it first happened, because like I said, I guess, like we said earlier, to flash back here real quick, we did have the World Cup on at the same time. So the World Cup was actually the audio that I had on. I didn't have the audio for it. It's like, okay, I'm tuning in to watch the UFC and McGregor. We can't turn the audio on. And then it's like, okay, it's going to be this most dramatic thing. We immediately just have to turn the audio on because the fight ends a minute in. But I had the audio for the Argentina game on at the time. So again, I'm watching McGregor in the walkout. He's walking out lazy. It's kind of 75, 85% knee throws. He slips on both of them. And then he just kind of, awkwardly limps around for a second, and the ref, and he is like laying on his back after the slips for a while, like trying to throw kicks up too. So I'm sitting there watching that, and I'm like, is that part of it? Is that like part of his strategy? Which you can't, like, I don't think legally kick a guy underneath the chin. I think you can, of course, like kick him if he, leans down into something, or, give him body shots or something like that. But I don't think you can lay on the ground and then kick a guy up under the jaw, which, I mean, probably would be a knockout blow. But again, I don't think that is a legal move in the UFC. I could be totally wrong, but I think that specific landing spot, just from maybe something that I have planted from a fight in the past, that might be something that is illegal. But I thought, okay, is this his way to like control the Holloway punches, because he's can, keep him at, a leg's distance, and then kind of, get body shots with the heels and stuff like that, which I'm not saying is a great strategy, but I'm like, okay, is this some, again, weird gimmicky strategy that McGregor's going to try to use for round 1 and round 2? And then he gets back up, like we're saying, limps around. The ref didn't call the fight when he was on the ground. McGregor's like at that point too, like kind of almost clearly calling for the fight to be called in a way. I know that, like, Holloway was saying like, oh, McGregor said that he's got to keep it going. That's not really the implication that I think anybody in the arena got when we were watching. I say we in the arena. Anybody watching the game, again, live, or maybe this was a TV watching the World Cup and then having it on mute. Maybe that specific group of people, myself included into that. Maybe we thought that it wasn't necessarily the implied that McGregor wanted to keep going. Which again, you tear his knee, it's not like he has to be that. It's not like he has to be the guy. Again, I don't even want to really bring Kobe up to compare McGregor. Rest in peace to Kobe. But, again, for comparing, powering through an injury, it's not like you have to be, Kobe in that situation or something. It's like, okay, if your knee's torn, your knee's torn. But, it's just like, okay, it's just not the impression that I got from watching the situation play out there. And really, once they called the fight, I honestly thought that, and, again, hopefully McGregor's lawyers aren't tuned in here at this point. But I honestly thought that McGregor kind of threw the fight. And maybe, what was I just listening to as well, too? Like, I've been, listening to a bunch of rewatchables pods, and maybe they were talking about some stuff. I don't know. Maybe we had, I think, Harlem Nights. Isn't there like they throw the fight storyline in Harlem? I forget which rewatch, because I haven't done a rewatchable on Harlem Nights yet, which we would definitely be tuning into. But I'm trying to remember what fight they were talking about, where they were breaking down the logistics of somebody throwing the fight. Hey, yo, Chad, do we have to like look that up? I want to say it was like an iconic riffing on history in a movie situation, but was it actually, you know what it was, Chad? I think it was maybe, you know what? It might have been this latest one. I think, see, I've been going back and re-listening to a bunch of them, so now I'm out of order at this point. I don't even know what the chronological drop date is for the episodes themselves, but they just did Ali this week. Michael Mann, Will Smith, they just were breaking down that movie, and they were talking about the Ali Sonny Liston fight, and they were talking about how Sonny Liston takes the phantom punch in that fight, and it's kind of a suspicious moment. Of course, did Sonny Liston, I think maybe, again, obviously rest in peace to both of them, boxing legends, obviously, a whole era of boxing ancestors at that point, just absolute icons. Obviously, Ali, the leader there, and just the sports world as well. But I think maybe Sonny Liston had some ties to some things, so I think maybe there was some evidence there. But and I was like, I did a light read on the Wikipedia page. It's like, okay, the Wikipedia page definitely is like, oh, but this is probably something that happens, and I'm like, okay, did like a mafia guy get in the Wikipedia page and like try to drop that in there? I don't know, but I was like, maybe that's what subconsciously I was thinking about as I was watching the McGregor fight. I was thinking about Sonny Liston. Hey yo. And I was definitely not thinking that, I guess with all due respect to Max Holloway, we were not thinking Max Holloway was, Muhammad Ali in that situation. But I guess we got to finish this Google search here. Pause. Most iconic fight dives. Is this going to make sense if we Google this again? We're thinking more boxing at this point, chat. And hey, yo, look at the number one that pops up: Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston, 1965. Hey, yo. So again, we're just reading off of the Google AI here at this point. So the much trusted Google AI, but the most famous alleged dive in boxing, Liston went down in the see, and that's the part as well too that was maybe a little suspicious. Sorry, Chad, I have to reach for the computer charger here real quick because it is dying. But yeah, it was obviously the first round early on, and I think the main reason for that is if you're gonna take the dive in the fight. If you're going to lose the fight, why actually lose the fight? Because in both of these situations, again, McGregor minus 325. I don't know what Sonny Liston was going into this fight. Like, can we find odds on this? Let's see. Ali versus Liston. Was it Liston or Liston? Oh, Liston. 2 odds. They had to have him back in the day, so they had to be around 13-5, 8-1. Whoa, wait a second. For context, oh, wait a second. So for context, their first bout in February 1964 favored much wider margin with Liston was the favorite at the time. Liston, an overwhelming favorite, 7-1. Maybe this whole thing was corrupt, chat. Hey, yo. Was Ali not even like a thing? Again, a guy being 8-1 is just like, Ali is just like either you've never heard of him before at that point, but he'd already changed his name, right? Or was he? Oh no, it says Cassius Clay versus Liston. Hey, so again, he might have been just still emerging at that point, but you don't even get. Maybe the matchups are different as well too. Again, maybe just sort of the fight politics of who certain fighters would take. Maybe a fighter wouldn't take an 8-1 fight now because they wouldn't want to risk losing to a guy that's 8-1. If you're going to be competing for titles, you're going to be mostly defending your title against like the real big money title fights, and again, that's probably going to be some real competition there. But either way, I guess it says Sonny Liston. It says the 65 rematch against Sonny Liston entered. Okay, wait a second. We should probably just read from the beginning of the sentence. Muhammad Ali entered his 1965 heavyweight championship rematch against Sonny Liston as the betting underdog again, Chad. Hey, yo. So I don't know what the mob. We'd have to go back and see the logistics of how having Sonny Liston as the favorite would work. But what's 13 divided by 5, Chad? So 2.5-1. So I guess it's a little bit more tuned down at that point. So, but see, that's a more realistic, like 2.5. Again, like Holloway was 3.5, minus 325, if I'm not mistaken. So Sonny Liston in the first match was 8-1 versus Muhammad Ali. Chat, the 60s, turns out they were, I guess, but the odds had been around a little bit at that point. So maybe they should have had odds figured out. But yeah, either way, we're talking about the Phantom Punch as well too. See, the most famous alleged dive, Phantom Punch. Many fans in the Reddit box community argue it did not actually make solid contact. I'm not gonna lie to you, I did obviously go back and watch this after they were talking about it on the Ali fight. We were like, okay, we have to make sure that we had seen this highlight at some point. So we watched it. We have seen it now, and it is if it had happened in 2025, it would be a little bit more difficult, the logistics. But the thing with the Phantom Punch specifically would be the multiple camera angles. What we were watching, it was a replay of one camera angle, and Liston's back is to the camera, so that kind of covers up the angle in terms of the cleanness of the contact. Because Ali definitely does throw something there, and Liston definitely does lean into it. And the thing about it as well, too, is I guess and maybe I need to go back and re-listen to the Rewatchables pod about it to see how they described it. Maybe we weren't totally, listening 100% to the episode as we should have been, but to, quote them as we're saying this. But they maybe were implying a little bit that, like, that was the knockout punch in a way. Or I guess, we were just kind of picking that up. But that's just how we took the Phantom Punch when they first said it, was that was the knockout punch. So I thought it was like, okay, weak moment. Liston goes down, lays down. He does get back up, and then, Ali continues to kind of hit him around a little bit at that point, and then the ref calls the fight after that. So it is very much a little bit like the McGregor one. Again, the only difference is McGregor does have the plant to, I guess, bail him out as well. There are a couple other ones here that could be mentioned. George Foreman versus Jimmy Young. It says after his grueling loss to Ali, 1977, after his grueling loss to Ali, Foreman struggled against Young in Puerto Rico. In a highly unusual moment, Foreman claimed to have experienced a religious epiphany/exhaustion that caused him to voluntarily count, sparking decades of dive rumors. Hey, yo, chat. I mean, that could just be George Foreman again after a grueling loss to Ali. Maybe he was literally just in his own, in his own head at that point, and was the exhaustion definitely is a part of it as well too. Not to say that he didn't experience some type of divine intervention in a way. Like, again, I guess I don't know where he was at medically at that point. It literally could have been something like that where he needed to have a moment to step away, and like, hey, if George Foreman had continued in a certain way in the boxing, I don't even know what he maybe takes more fights after this stuff, but again, but maybe if that fight, the damage had continued in that moment, again, you just never know. You never know. So that's a little bit different. That to me reads a little bit more like, and I guess, again, not obviously watching the UFC, but I guess we do follow ESPN on Instagram, so we do get the posts about that. Hey, yo, chat, we don't quickly scroll past the post every time. I guess you caught us there. But I did see for the last Topuria fight that Topuria, if I'm not mistaken, again, because I didn't see, I should probably look up just at least the highlight for that one as well too to see what happened. But I think they were saying that Topuria didn't get out of the corner for one of the fights. So is that does that happen in one of the Creeds? I think just one of the guys not get up, or maybe that's a Rocky. I don't remember, but hey, now a reason to go back and rewatch Creed. But I think it was Topuria not getting out of the corner. And again, Topuria was like really down bad, beat up at that point. So we could go back and see where George Foreman was at in the fight. I guess it doesn't say what round this was in. So here, let's look this up real quick. Foreman versus Young, 77. Okay, I guess this was their one matchup. It seems like a fight between top-ranked heavyweight contenders George Foreman and Jimmy Young had been in the works since June 76. Shortly after Foreman had successfully defended the NABF heavyweight title by defeating former undisputed heavyweight champion Joe Frazier in their rematch of their 73 fight. Foreman was the number one ranked heavyweight at the time and had hoped his victory over Frazier would position him for a rematch with Ali, but Ali had a title defense against Ken Norton in September and was teasing retirement. After the Norton meet, we saw George Foreman approaching it, and he was like, I think I might get out of here, causing Foreman to pursue a fight against Jimmy Young, who was the number 3 ranked heavyweight and earlier in the year had gone the distance with Ali in a failed bid for Ali's undisputed heavyweight title. So clearly, obviously he was going with George Foreman here, but, had gone with Ali. And I guess I don't know too much about Jimmy Young. I want to say that he is a name that, I'm not unfamiliar with, but I don't know necessarily his championship, pedigree overall. Maybe a little, in that Carl, the Utah Jazz of the day, sort of situation of just kind of really going toe to toe with a lot of these legends, but maybe never just quite getting there. Or maybe there's probably like a better tennis comp for it. I don't know. Maybe, maybe who's the guy that is it Medvedev? Hey, who's that guy that's kind of playing right now? But I think he might have some Grand Slam wins though. So maybe I'm not sure, but either way, it says known for his awkward and defensive style and counterpunching, one of the top contenders of the 70s, losing controversial unanimous decision to Ali in 76 and earning a fight against Foreman in 77. fought many other significant fighters twice, outpointing Ron Lyle, and losing only by split decision to then number 1 contender Ken Norton in a title eliminator in late 77. Fellow boxer Bobby Watts was his cousin. So yeah, I mean, clearly was very, very close, like on the precipice multiple times of being the champion himself. But the fight that we're talking about was officially announced February 77, taking place the following month, March, to take place in the following month, March 77, in Maryland, where Young had fought Ali. Oh, so maybe a little home court advantage there. The venue was changed a week later. Oh, that's right. It did say earlier that it was in Puerto Rico. What a change! Well, it went from Landover, Maryland, to the Roberto Clemente Coliseum in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Don King making moves, chat. Hey, yo. Foreman, it says Foreman struggled, fight details. Foreman struggled throughout much of the fight. See, so much of the fight. I guess what round does this say? Going into the 12th going into the 12th round. Going into the 12th and final round. Young would take the round, becoming the third and final fighter to score a knockdown on Foreman. When Foreman missed with the wild right and Young countered him with an overhand right that sent Foreman down on knee. Foreman got back up quickly, but still had the ref, but still had to take the ref standing 8 count. After which he continued the fight, which had 1 more minute remaining. When Young continued to throw punches in flurries, the exhausted and mostly clenched fight came to an end. Young was ultimately named the winner by unanimous decision, winning all 3. Hey, yo. Wait, so is this going to give us something about the quote? Okay, so this does mention here that Foreman suffered from heat exhaustion, becoming ill in his dressing room after the fight, and claimed to be a near-death experience. Before having a religious experience, Foreman explained changed his life. 2 months later, Foreman announced his retirement from boxing in a Houston radio station, citing his newfound religious beliefs and his mother as a reason as he decided to step away. And boxing is not one of those, football is one of those sports that if people retire early, and again, what even is early as well too, like the names that we can all think of that, especially for this generation, Calvin Johnson, Andrew Luck, Barry Sanders is still a name that we talk about as well too for that storyline specifically. You hate that that's kind of the first thing that you think of, but it is a little bit. But for, again, like for Luck and Calvin Johnson, those guys did play like 8 to 9 years. So it's not like they just, left the league after 3 years and were like, we're done. I'm not, they took the toll of the league for a while, made a good amount of money as well too. It's not like it was they were smart businessmen about it. And that was, again, the business decision. The business decision was, do I keep making money in the NFL this way? Or in the risk of, again, I'm trying to get into that perspective. We're not speaking of, I guess the narratives do exist as well too for the NFL. You do have to be aware of, what you're getting yourself into. So I guess we can't, brainwash it there. So you have to be open and honest. It is the conundrum of, are you going to continue to making money and take the damage of the potential, what that could be for the NFL? Or, am I going to walk away at this particular point where, and, again, even if you play 8 to 9 years, that's no guarantee. If you play a year of the NFL, I'm sure you're at risk of something, comparatively. You hate to say it, but the, genetics and stuff like that, just the individuality of each person is going to affect, in different ways. You just never even know. Again, individual moments versus the wear and tear of the course of the career. You just never know how it's going to play out. So Andrew, again, a guy like Andrew Luck could still walk away after 8 to 9 years in the NFL and still have, potentially the, tragic side effects of something like that. Obviously, there are stories out there right now that, obviously, thoughts and prayers with a guy like Chris Johnson at a time like this because of what you see him experiencing from the toll of his playing days. So, again, boxing is one of those sports where, like, if George Foreman after a fight decides, like, what, actually, I had an epiphany that was, I need to retire, then it's like, yeah, you know what, you gotta just you gotta believe him there, and you gotta go with it. And again, he had the championship runs, he had the great belt. I guess, again, I'm not knowing 100% his entire career timeline, so I don't know when Yeah, and it says he competed between 67 and 97. So yeah, I was saying, like, I assume he would have had more fights after that. I can't imagine that George Foreman would have been done in 77. Just again, from how, legendary he is. I guess it could have been, obviously, could still be a short run, but it just seemed like, people talk about the run going a little bit later there. But yeah, 87, I guess, is when he stepped back in. Surprised the boxing world by announcing his comeback at the age of 38. We'll just wait till 2025 when Mike Tyson decides to show up against Jake Paul at like 60 years old, and then has his butt out on Netflix on live TV after kissing. Was that his son that interviewed him, or was that just a reporter? I forget. But does he like kiss the reporter on the cheek and then have his butt out just walking away? What a scenario. And then almost gets Jake, and then almost knocks out Jake Paul in the first round. Like, I think Mike Tyson honestly had more vigor in the first round he had more intensity in the first round of his fight against Jake Paul than Conor McGregor did in the first fight against, in this fight here against Max Holloway. And, again, obviously the supposed injury happened early enough on that it's like, okay, yes, that's going to zap him of everything for sure. And the one angle that they did show of the injury was like a high angle as well, too. It's not like we had through the thing or whatever. We need the MRIs, chat. Drop the MRI. Hey, yo. I know McGregor probably would do that. We all know, what angle he'd be posting. But, I need to see the ligaments. Hey, yo, what's the mob situation with McGregor is basically what we're getting at here. Because, again, it's like watching this on mute. It was a little interesting. Just seeing how it went down. And it did make me Google the fight contracts as well, too. Again, for McGregor to do this, and like I'm saying, I guess the intensity was something that I was thinking about. The odds was something that I was thinking about. This, boxing history, but again, specifically Ali Liston, and the fact that we had just listened to the Rewatchables pod about it, that was also on our mind. And then, again, this is like I'm saying earlier, this is a different time for the UFC now. You're not getting the pay-per-view money. So the money going to the fighters is going to the fighters differently. And back in the day, that was what do you say, the marketing genius of McGregor, the business strategy that he had that worked out for him that, again, helped the UFC, but it was just that was the business strategy of the UFC was you had to be entertaining in your own right. You had to literally get people to pay for the event. And it was just as much of, again, I want to see what, whether it's the hate watching, whether it's the, fan watching, whether it's the appreciation of the game as well, too, again, for another guy, even if it's not just McGregor. Obviously, McGregor is not the only UFC fighter you're buying pay-per-views for, but just, for him specifically, he was one of those guys that was like a early, say early marketer, but like a great take the next step for the UFC into the mainstream type marketer for him, and was major in the pay-per-view stuff. And that was I guess, I'm not getting to the next point here. That was reflected in the purse that he would get at the time. And it would be directly, again, tied to the amount of people that were watching the pay-per-view fights. Now, and, again, I don't know exactly the total dynamics of the contracts back then, but that's just a simpler thing to know a little bit. Like, I guess, or just for me to conceptualize is like, okay, the events made the money, by people buying the event to watch it beforehand. So the fighters get a cut of the pay-per-view purse. And then there's like maybe some bonuses and stuff. And I'm sure there was obviously upfront money that you did get. And McGregor would, get, more money up front, be a more popular star than some of the other guys. But for, again, getting the cut of the pay-per-view bag as well, too, I guess you could take the dot in a pay-per-view because people have already bought the fight and they've already bought the full card. So it doesn't necessarily, prove my point more. And again, I guess, before this, and I guess I don't know if Liston Ali 2 was a pay-per-view necessarily, but it's not like there haven't necessarily been that type of things beforehand in the pay-per-view era. But it does change the amount of money that Conor is getting up front. So that is, I think, true. Because I looked this up last night and I still didn't totally believe it. So let's see if we can look this up here and just double check if the last 24 hours has updated this at all. Holloway McGregor 2 contract details. let's see what we can find here real quick. Holloway, the customer service line chat. Hey, yo. It's like, how do I get the return on this fight? Everybody's trying to get their pay-per-view money back is essentially what is happening here online. It looks like otherwise, yeah, maybe a little more difficult to find. Let's see. Where is that at? We were on some website that I'm like, I don't know what this is, but it's given us the contract details, so I guess we're just gonna go with it at this point. But okay, we have this saying here that McGregor, of course, loses. So I don't know if this is going to give us the contract here from Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, am I saying that right? He tried to continue to fight for a few seconds, blah, 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 blah. Some of the quotes and stuff. But I'm not seeing any money in here. Some of the, of course, other details of McGregor's, McGregor's ongoings there. Yikes. But let's see. We're not finding him. What's the website that I was on? Let me see if I can find it on my phone here and see if we can look it back up. I don't even want to say the numbers because it's quite a discrepancy. But again, oh, the Times of India. Okay, chat, let's see. The Times of India. Do they have this article that we are looking for? McGregor UFC is 239, the one that we just had here, just to double check, or 329. Hey, yo, get the numbers wrong. 329. So McGregor 329 purse. We have to go outside of the US to find this information. But let's see what we can dig up here on this particular topic. Obviously, we got a little Wimbledon situation today as well too. I don't know if this article is going to be front and center at all. I guess here, let's see if we can search this real quick. Yeah, UFC 329 purse is probably the keyword that we should use here, chat. I don't know. We'll give up here shortly. We won't try to go on too long. Hey, yo, chat. Thoughts and prayers with the people involved in what looks like not good situation in some of the headlines here. I feel like we can't just scroll past some of this stuff and not say, a quick word. But I guess UFC 2, or maybe we got to spell the search right as well too. Would probably help, chat. Okay, we're not speeding up our search any faster here. Okay, it says, can Conor McGregor come back? Blah, 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 blah. McGregor start time. Yeah, here we go. Purse, the Notorious. So, again, we don't know exactly what the reporting situation is here, but it says, according to the Times of India, Conor McGregor is set to make another massive payday when he returns to the UFC at UFC 239 this weekend. The former two-time division champ will face Match Holloway, blah, 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 blah. I guess we don't need to read all this. But here we go. Skip right to it. It says Conor McGregor is expected to earn well over $30 million for his return fight against Max Holloway at UFC 239, suggested by industry financial reports. While the exact same figure has not been confirmed by the UFC, industry estimates his overall earnings could exceed the reported $33 million he received for his last appearance against Dustin Poirier in 2021. If we continue here, it says during his prime, he's headlined several of the highest selling events in company history. And of course, the highest, I think, boxing pay-per-view of all time as well, too, with the McGregor event, which was really one of the biggest, money makers there for him. I guess as it continues to go on and say here, it says McGregor reportedly earned a guaranteed purse of around $30 million. Oh, this was for the McGregor Mayweather fight. Around $30 million, and eventually took home well over $100 million after all the revenues were calculated. And that fight was a good fight too. It was like 7 rounds. But the Irish superstar has also confirmed recently that he agreed to a new UFC contract after negotiations with the promotion. McGregor explained that both sides eventually found common ground during the discussion. He admitted the final agreement was different from what either side initially wanted, but said a compromise was reached and satisfied everyone involved. So, again, I don't know what is true or here or not. I don't even think we said that sentence right, but it is potentially saying that McGregor made over $30 million from this fight. And, again, I don't know if that was bonuses, if that was he would won the fight, what he would make, if he loses in the first round by injuring his knee. But I'm just saying, watching it on mute, I did say, is the phantom knee injury, chat? Is this phantom punch? I hate to be the one to say it. But I'm not saying that that's what it is, and I'm not throwing that out there as a theory. I'm just saying that going back in time, that's what I was thinking in the moment watching it. And then, I had to grab the remote, then unmute the TV, and then I was like, let me go back and watch it on mute real quick. And then for some reason, I couldn't get the Paramount Plus to dial in the skip back right. I overshot it a lot, and then I was like, okay, now I skipped forward too much. I just couldn't quite get it right. I guess that's what happens when the fight's literally a minute long. But watched it with sound, and it's like, okay, nothing's really changing here from what we initially expected. The energy and the walkout still the same with the sound on. The kind of attempt on the first throw is still the same. You do have Cormier commenting on it as it happens, so that's a little different than watching it on the mute. But, our general opinion of the event is still the same. And then the ref calls the fight, and McGregor, of course, is limping around. You don't know what happens. Then eventually they get to the replay, and then they're kind of talking about, oh, this looks like maybe it could have been a moment here off the plant of the initial throw. That looks like, it was bad. But and again, after watching the replay, I was like, okay, I can get back to 50-50 now. I don't think that I can necessarily just sit here and claim 100% that he can throw the fight, but I can say that is something that I thought at the time. I was like, did McGregor just throw this fight? Because, and he's made so much over. It's like you would think that initially is like the first thing that somebody would say if that were the storyline. Like, again, allegedly, I'm just saying, if the storyline was a massive, former headlining superstar like Conor McGregor that has made all this money, took a dive. I guess what is the NBA equivalent of it? Or, I guess it'd be like if they were like, okay, if Drake bought an Iceman or something like that, it came out of, I don't know what to bring Drake back into it or something like that. But what's the NBA comparison? I guess, Michael Porter instead of Deontay Porter. Again, I don't even want to throw out a name. Who's a name that we just know automatic? I guess we can use a retired guy. Like, if Tim Duncan had taken a dive at some point, which we never know happened because Tim Duncan's the, most outstanding guy literally ever. It is like, obviously, like the scenario I'm saying is a joking scenario, but I'm not joking by saying that because, again, obviously we've seen, the relationship between Duncan and Pop at this point, and just the sweetness there between those just in that relationship is a beautiful thing to see. And again, really, I think speaks to the character of everybody involved, because it takes a great character obviously to help out in that situation. You got to give Duncan his props, but I mean, it takes a great character for Pop to I'm not saying demand like he's physically demanding, but I'm just saying, like, when he is in a place of need, that somebody would feel the the demand within themselves to want to go help Pop. Like, again, that reflects on Pop's character as well too. So that's just just get the double good guy factor there. So that's why I can we can use the scenario obviously because it never would happen. So it's just a funny joking scenario. But like if Tim Duncan had taken a dive at some point, you'd be like, well, why would Tim Duncan take a dive? He's made all this money, he's done so well. I guess because he's looking at the guys he's was like, oh, I saw the future. Jaylen Brown's gonna make $70 million. Or like, hey, but if Jaylen Brown took a dive, it's like, oh, Jaylen Brown made $70 million. Why would he do it? Because it's it's not about that, chat. Hey, maybe it is sometimes for on a case by case basis. But like we just saw what Chauncey Billups was a little. I don't know if he had been involved with some stuff beforehand. Maybe some money had gone to the wayside in a way that it shouldn't have, and now he's got to get it back. But he obviously wasn't involved in this gambling ring for financial need per se. It was more so the act of doing it is what he wanted to be involved in. So McGregor is making $30 million off of this fight, or 20 million if he takes a dive or whatever. Maybe he's just taking a dive in his own right. Maybe it's not even the Irish mob. Maybe it's just his own contract acumen of like, here is the upfront money from the non-pay-per-view situation. Again, he took home 100 million from the Mayweather fight, but that's, that's like the Tyson Jake Paul situation on a, Tyson is as famous as any of those guys. Maybe as famous as all three of those guys combined. So, again, just having his name in an event makes that event as popular as anything. But, regardless, that's just such a crazy, one of a kind fight that happened to have two personalities in a sport like that could, I guess you could have some of the heavyweights, like if Francis Ngannou had fought like Tyson Fury at some point, like that would have been crazy. But even still, I guess, again, it goes to McGregor's ability to sell the fight. Like, you have to give him his credit. McGregor sold the biggest fight of all time. Not to say that McGregor's the greatest fighter of all time, but he sold the biggest fight of all time. And then he literally did it now, Chad. He sold, how the kids say it. I don't even know if I'm using that right, but this is how I know I'm getting washed. I just like the last probably like the last 18 months, I just realized I can't keep up with the new slang and the new lingo. I'm just gonna have to let it pass me by. That was a real tough moment. I'm like, do I have to like start going like to like websites just like start like looking up terms and like see like, okay, to like check like word of the day. Like I've never gone to a dictionary, but like I have to go to the Urban Dictionary. Like, what are the kids talking about right now? And then it's like, oh, well, oh, we don't want to see that. Oh, the next generation screwed. But literally, if you go to Urban Dictionary, but I think it's all screwing terms. But what he's saying, it's like, do I have to like start going to like cool Gen Z words.com and like see what's going on? Like, what's the new term that's going on TikTok? What's the new like TikToktrend.com? And then it's just gonna keep me updated on what the new dance trend is. Like, that's basically where I was at. And I'm like, I think I might just have to let it slide by. And just, what, if I hear a new term and I don't know what it means, I just will have to not know. And then, you can always, I guess, just go look it up then. But it's like, or you can just not know what it means. And that can be okay. And then if you learn what it means, you can decide if you want to use it in, your everyday, vernacular. See, again, we're using words like vernacular. So, who says that? But, you can use it in your everyday speech, your everyday language. But, again, I was like, we might just have to let this pass by. But I guess either way, for McGregor literally sold this fight, and it was just like, okay, I guess we can't speak to it's more the emotional side of things. We're like, okay, you're tuning into a fight, what's gonna happen, and I guess you can't be too mad. Again, we didn't necessarily, the people in the arena are the ones that had to be bummed out because they were literally their the effort to go to watch that is a little different than queuing up a non pay-per-view. And just be like, oh, okay, let me tune in here, once every 2 years and see what's going on. But, that just sort of like build to see, a sporting event, and then to have it sort of putter out like that. Even if again, Holloway had knocked him out right away, that's totally different than, and I guess, there is that respectable side of Holloway as well, too. Like, he could have just probably just, laid into him there right away with the injury being what it was. At least just on like a personal level, he just sustained him. I mean, but that was the other part of it as well, too. I totally forgot about the Holloway part. Holloway as well wasn't helping, my thought process for McGregor there. Because Holloway gets on the mic afterwards, and one of the things he says in the celebration, he doesn't really say much, but one of the things he does say is, let's get this money for McGregor Holloway 3. And even if McGregor blew out his knee, like, yes, and I guess we could get to sort of the legacy stuff with McGregor here. Maybe this could pivot into this. But, even if McGregor blew out his knee, and there is sort of a little bit of a sympathetic thing there in a way, like, I don't know if people want to continue to see him fighting. And, again, I guess we could go to the viewership number here. It's like, oh, at the time McGregor was walking out 240 million people across the world. Paramount Plus probably doesn't even have 240 million people signed up for it, if we're being honest. It's probably got like 60 million subscribers. So like maybe, 850,000 of them were tuned in to watch the McGregor fight. I don't know. But, again, I don't know what the numbers were for, McGregor's bringing people back to the UFC at this point. But I think the fact that it was Holloway as well, too, did really help. And the fact that it was a fighter that has been successful lately, a fighter that had a really, again, entertaining, chaotic ending to a fight recently with the way that the Gaethje, the way that the Gaethje fight ended with the point at the center of the logo and then the throw punching there. It's just like, okay, Holloway's entertainment value in the ring versus McGregor's entertainment value in the ring, this has the potential to be something. So, again, there was other factors there as well, too, outside of just it singularly being, the McGregor fight to return. But, again, Holloway starts talking about, oh, let's get the money for fight 3. It's like, I don't know if I want to watch Holloway versus McGregor 3. Again, I probably will watch them, or like as a UFC fan, you're like, I'd probably watch the next McGregor. And maybe that's the projection pause as well, too, where it's like, okay, I think I can actually be at peace now. Like, I don't have to watch anymore. All the fighters are done. Chat. I guess if Pereira fights again, maybe if it was like a Pereira John Jones situation, I might tune into that. But I thought continuing into the UFC, like maybe I'd be a Topuria guy. But then again, I was like, well, I guess, we can let the UFC go by the wayside. I know, Topuria, like we still like would, watch the UFC, see the posts and stuff. Like I say, that's why I was, looking at the Topuria one there to see what happened for that last fight. But, for this one, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to actually sit down and watch what was happening. And yes, chat, hey, it is what it is. McGregor allegedly injured his knee. So we'll hold him to his, we'll I guess we can't really we'll hold him up to his word there, chat, because he can't stand on his one knee. Hey, it is what it is. And like I dropped it in a little bit earlier, it has to be said, but as we see some of the storylines being mentioned here in the article, I guess you could get into the argument of, what do you define people by, but I think McGregor's actions have been pretty well documented at this point. Like, with all due respect to McGregor, like, I don't necessarily think it's been like there are people obviously that they have a moment. I'm not just saying like a moment. It could be anything. Again, it could be something simple that's like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. But hey, again, something happens and they are genuinely like, again, it's not for us to be the judge of those things. But I think again we understand sitting around, that sort of arc of somebody, again, not to say that some things are obviously a little bit more serious than saying like just a mistake. But some people make some mistake, like maybe like I guess like a DUI, or I guess I guess we don't want to start ranking seriousness or things like that, because that could implicate other people on the road. That's just not putting your own self at risk. That's putting everybody on the road at risk doing those types of things. So again, obviously we're not just gonna sit here and throw that out there, but again, in terms of the just the scale, it's like, oh, this guy got, let's just say like a DWI in a parking lot or something like that. Like, they got him right as he was going to his car, which you do see clips of that where it's like the cop like right by the bar, and there's like waiting for the car to pull out. There's one specifically that I'm thinking of where it's like the car, I think, was like pulling like a little bit, out, pause, and then the cop like pulled a little bit out, and then it was like kind of them playing a game of chicken, and then of course the one guy continued to drive and got pulled over. But I guess if we're thinking like that type of scenario or something, there is like the guy, like there is that side of McGregor where it's a little unremorseful in some ways. I guess maybe that's just what I'm kind of not saying in some way, or not verbalizing clearly. But I think that is what has seemed a little bit like at times. Again, that is both athletically with just his fighting ego, but that seems to have maybe translated over into some other things where, again, maybe you'd want to see a little personal growth. You'd want to, again, not obviously just a little, but, you'd want to see some growth. You'd want to see some accountability. And I guess I'm not going to, maybe those things have been there and I'm not, remembering them. But it seems like a lot of the stuff that has gone down, maybe, again, obviously, just a lot of, ugly storylines in some ways. So, again, if we're talking about the one fighter to blow his knee out in this situation, like, it is not necessarily like, again, the 100%, sympathy situation there. Like, there is, like we said, just to say it straight out, right? Like we said earlier, there is a little bit of a karmic stuff there for McGregor. I don't know if all the injuries piling up, the way that they have, it's like, okay, at some point there is just a bad injury luck that has happened here over the last couple of years. And steroids were something I thought about as well too, because there was an era where he like kind of like really did, pause, like balloon up in a way, and was like, I don't think he was actively fighting. Maybe he was recovering from an injury. Maybe the steroids were part of the injury recovery. but I don't know if he's maybe like gone off the steroids at this point. He still obviously is able to add bulk naturally or something. Like again, he's obviously got a little bit of a Christian Bale-esque body with the way he can kind of go up and down through the weight classes, but we see Pereira has the ability to, shed and gain weight in a crazy way as well too and move through these different classes. So, there are certain body types that obviously can't do that versus, you see even like, again, we tread lightly, obviously there's no shame in anything here. I'm just, pointing some stuff out. Like you do see like, when John Jones fought Cyril Gane at heavyweight, it was, a little bit different. It was a little bit different him going up in weight class. Like it definitely seemed like John Jones went up in weight class. Like, McGregor, it just seems like, oh, McGregor is just now in this weight class. Like his body type is just now this body type. But, again, obviously naturally he was a little bit of a different starting point. So I don't know if over time, like that sort of thing as well too, like fighting, like, Hemsworth and like Chris Evans and Michael B. Jordan's not like active. I guess he was in Creed, but he's not actively continuing to fight, you know, as like a ripped guy, as like a jacked guy. I guess a lot of guys are jacked up, but like jacked up beyond like your natural weight as well too, if that makes sense. Where like Hemsworth I think is a little bit like this. Like Hemsworth is obviously like a naturally really you know ripped up guy, just working out and staying fit. Hey yo, but when he's like going into Thor mode and like really bulking up again, like that's kind of like McGregor, I guess maybe like moving up through the weight classes. Like I don't know if again over time that there's just been wear and tear there because again it is all lower leg stuff. At this point, he had the break with the bones, and now he's had like kind of a ligament tear with the knee. So again, I don't know if that's just, I'm saying like, substances changing, biology, genetic makeup stuff there. I guess what, phrase it cleaner there. But, I don't know if that's just like, again, like maybe there was some steroid use, you're on and off that, and then injury stuff happens in a way. And I think changing, moving up and down in the weight class, I think like we're saying, I think just changing your weight that aggressively all the time, I'm sure, it doesn't help as well too. You know, I don't know if James Harden's like the perfect comp for this in some ways, but it did seem like when James Harden went into trade mode, I mean, it could just be where he was at in his career as well too. But he was so durable all those years in Houston, and then kind of, it's like, okay, James Harden, like what's going on here? He's trying to request a trade. We getting like, bulky James Harden walking around. It seemed like there was a change after that. And he hasn't been necessarily as durable of a player. And, maybe he's leaned a little bit more into that body type as well, too. Who's to say? But, yeah, again, either way, there are, I guess, like there were like injury storylines that I started to consider as well, too, as the event itself was playing out. But, or like as the replays were playing out, and it was like, okay, again, there could be, what do you say? There could be legit evidence that his knee was really, torn in this scenario. But yeah, it was definitely very shaky there at first. But like I did mention the legacy thing as well too. Like again, I tread lightly. I only say this because again, there are some karmic things with McGregor that not to say that like a guy has an injury coming, but there are just again like some 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 things in the past there for sure. Again, obviously, Rem and Sam Pod is not the judge of humanity over here, but it's obviously undeniable what some of these storylines are here. And for him as a fighter as well too, like his fighting career has gone a little inconsistent in the last half of his career. Again, he had some impressive moments moving up into weight classes. He did have the 2 belts at one point and was one of the first guys to do that. Again, very cool. It was one of those things where he did sort of capitalize on a business opportunity as well, which kind of does maybe need to be the 2 belt factor. It's, very difficult for a guy to just like, let me, win 2 just absolutely grueling title fights back to back in different weight classes. Like, there is, if you're going to, and I guess maybe, I guess, I don't know, I guess you could, do whatever you want as a fighter, but the times we have seen it, for a lot of the times, it has been the other fighter looking at that weight class and being like, okay, there's a definite weakness here, more so than, let me attack the strength of this weight class, if that makes sense. But, again, he was early on in, obviously, having that for his, career accomplishments there. But for his legacy to, you know, get a little bit as sketchy as it is. And like I'm saying, I don't think he's gone the same sort of GOAT route for the fighter. Maybe he thought he was going to, and maybe that's why he was really wanting to go that way with the multiple, you know, the multiple weight classes, and to really try to expand his legacy that way. But, you know, again, like I'm saying, he's just not in the first list of names that you bring up. And I think weirdly that him making the UFC more popular has like kind of made him a less, I don't want to say him a less great fighter, but, you know, again, 10 years ago, he would have been, I guess, I don't know if 2016 lines up correctly, but, you know, again, that early initial McGregor is one of the top guys. You would have said like the two greatest fighters in UFC history at that point are John Jones and Conor McGregor, because that's just like all the only names you would have known for fighters. And now with and I'm also, you know, again, projecting a little bit myself, you know, getting into the sport, but now there is just a little bit more of a known thing with the UFC. And I feel like it's not just the UFC being more mainstream per se amongst, you know, the casual sports fan, but I think the UFC has become a mainstream sport amongst the sports fans, if that makes sense. Where like I'm saying, it's in ESPN, it's in the highlights, it's in the rotation, it's in the posts. You know, I guess seeing the highlights and seeing the results on ESPN, you know, like on social media, you know, for all the sports, you know, again, like the way people follow basketball on Instagram now is probably, you know, the same way we can follow, you know, and know the news of different sports and not have to watch any of them. You know, again, we can still know what like the major baseball trades are and still not have to be a baseball fan, because it still is a mainstream sport. You know, again, if you're a sports fan, you probably, you know, hear who wins like the Stanley Cup. Like, you may not remember like a month from now, but I don't 100% remember who won the Stanley Cup, but obviously I remember watching it at the moment and remember keeping it on and being like, okay, you know, tuned in a little bit to what's going on here. Like there is a effort to be, you know, there is an effort to have some general knowledge of the situation, or, you know, again, there is just maybe the lack of effort to get some general knowledge as well too. Like it can just kind of be a thing that floats by. But, you know, again, for the increased knowledge of the UFC, like it's increased the knowledge of the history of some of these fighters from back in the day. You know, obviously the fighters continue to still, you know, go on. Like we're saying, a guy like Pereira was not around back when, you know, McGregor was first starting, but now that he is, you know, Pereira probably a better all-time fighter than McGregor in some ways. Again, McGregor, you know, immediately you say, well, McGregor's more entertaining. It's like, okay, I mean, yes, I get what you're saying there. But if we're actually talking about a fighter, and it's not just, okay, Pereira would beat up McGregor. It is, like we're saying, you know, level of competition. It is the vastness of the skill set and the, you know, again, like, I just think, you know, McGregor does have the punching power for sure, but I do think, you know, Pereira has more speed, a little more punch speed in some ways, and I do think maybe some of his punch, like, move versatility is a little bit better. Like, again, McGregor's definitely chaotic, and he is a technician as well too. Like there's that one clip of him talking to Tyson, and he's like, and you lunging, you know, everybody else steps and then but you lunge. I don't know if can we find the clip of McGregor breaking down boxing to Mike Tyson? Let's see what we got here. McGregor Tyson video. Oh, chat, see, we don't even have to see. This might be the next fight, chat. Ayo, Netflix. McGregor honestly should fight. Not that he should fight Tyson. Ayo, I guess, you know, respect to Tyson, chat. We don't need Tyson out in the ring again. But, you know, he needs to fight another semi-retired. He needs to fight Mayweather again. You know, ayo, another semi-retired legend. Who can he match up against? But he needs a legacy matchup, or just Jake Paul. Just do it, chat. Pause. Like he could just fight Jake Paul next at this point, because, you know, because I don't know what the UFC competition is. You know, might be a step above at this point as well. Can I not hear it, chat? I can't hear it myself. Oh, there we go. Now it's officially saying.
Zoomed in.
There we go. You
zoomed in, and then you
jump
here.
in.
They're right here. So I'm just doing the
Yeah,
same.
see, chat, this guy is you know it for sure.
How are you moving?
Oh yeah, see, chat, look at Tyson train up there. This might have been for the Jake Paul fight, or this is just Tyson. Oh, chat, look. Oh,
So are you just more
oh, chat, you got
You see
it.
Canelo, you see Justin do it. They go low.
Yeah,
to the
see
voice,
Canelo,
no voice.
Justin.
See, that's a whump,
Yeah,
hump.
chat, they're
So all he was doing is
nothing. compared to
Like you, a boxing mate is, a lot of people do this in boxing.
I mean,
They
Canelo
step
versus
forward,
McGregor.
yeah.
Canelo
You
versus
never-
McGregor would
you
be interesting.
Jumped in.
Wait, is Canelo there? Who's that one guy?
To them, you
Canelo and
jumped in,
Tyson's
and then you're
stunned.
here.
But I think Tyson
You're
is
right
stunned
here.
at the depth
That's all I'm talking about. I'm just doing the simple.
of boxing knowledge of McGregor is really what I think he is stunned by. There are, the versions of the clips that are the clip that is captioned. It'll be like, oh, Mike Tyson is, dumbfounded that McGregor would explain boxing. You're like, okay, he's not necessarily explaining boxing. He's just sort of like, breaking down his watching of it, if that makes sense. It'd be like if it was us, talking about how LeBron did something on the court. We're not we're not telling LeBron how to do something. We're looking back at how he did something and marveling at the thing he did, which is what McGregor is doing there. He's looking back at Tyson's fighting career and going, this was your technique compared to these guys. This is what I'm impressed by. Which, again, you could say, well, why would Tyson be impressed by that? I guess, it's not to necessarily impress Tyson, but it's just to, it's just to give him props in his thing, I guess. And that's obviously how McGregor does it. But it is one of the all-time legend young guy, I guess if I could say it like that way, protege, however you want to say it, like one of the legend current active, maybe one of the best legend active player interactions. There is also MJ like kind of not liking Karl Anthony Towns, I think is another one as well too. Let me see if we can find this. MJ Karl Anthony Towns handshake. I want to say he's talking to, maybe it's Luka, honestly, because Luka is a Jordan athlete, what do we mean by that? He is a Jordan brand athlete. I want to say Luka Doncic is represented by Jordan brand, but I don't know who represents Towns, but it didn't seem like MJ was too pleased there. Oh, this got to be it right here with what we're looking for. He's tackling him. He's excited to see him. He's picking him up. He does like the grab and pick up like he's like his nephew. Like, who does that, Chad? It's like an active NBA player. He's like, let me grab him by the waist. MJ's grabbing him by the... Then he gives like Karl Towns a handshake. He's like, ha 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 ha. I guess we don't really know what he says here. He's got Future going, Chad. Do you love the way I do love everybody? Do you love the way I do everybody? Hey, yo, so, and obviously, Chad, hey, yo, a different time, seeing some definite markings there of that. But, for the MJ Luka Karl Towns interaction, this is another iconic one as well too. But McGregor and Tyson is definitely up there. But yeah, Chad, I guess it probably is just a legit knee injury. It's probably just a legit knee injury. There's nothing suspicious about that. Nothing suspicious. His knee could have torn at any time. But he had to throw the double leg kick situation in the first round, not sustain any other damage besides that. Again, a knee injury is not that, not good. Like, you don't want to see that. The length of recovery, again, Topuria might be back fighting before McGregor, and Topuria was obviously like, both of his eyes swelled shut at the end of that one. McGregor outside of the knee will be fine. So that's just the part. And it was, again, the Sonny Liston situation. We had heard the wrong story at the wrong time, I guess, to get us thinking about the potential weird outcomes that could happen here. It says McGregor, though, has not revealed the extent of his injury at this point. Dana White said Saturday he and the doctors believed it to be a torn ACL. I mean, again, like, it's not like they don't know what's wrong with him. I mean, that MRI, it's not like, it's not like no way out. We're just sitting here waiting for the image to develop. Or is that Usual Suspects? Or yeah, I think that Usual Suspects uses that as well too, where they have the image or like the fax. One of them is a fax. I think maybe No Way Out, it's a fax that they're sending, and like the fax is like takes like 2 days for it to print out to the fax machine. And then Usual Suspects, they have the sketch. They have the face sketch. Is what they're doing. The artist is sketching it out while they're having it there. And then they have to, like, run it over across at the time. And then I'm thinking about that right. because Chaz Palminteri realizes that Kevin Spacey has been using the names when he turns around and looks at the board and he sees everything. Because then they do the drop. He like sees they like do the multiple cuts to the different names that you see, and then he drops the glass. And then when he drops the glass, it hits the ground and flips over, and then that's when you see at the bottom of the glass says Kobayashi. So then it's like, oh well, he's been making this whole thing up using the name. I guess. Whoa! Spoiler alert for the. I didn't mean to just spoil that there, chat. That's my bad. That is my bad. That IT might have to go back and cut that out. But spoiler alert for the usual suspects. We'll give you a second. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Spoiler alert. Here we go. To find out that of course Kevin Spacey is. I guess we won't say everything. We don't have to say every single detail, but just know that we are going into spoiling level details here. To know that Kevin Spacey has been using the names off of the whiteboard in the background. But then I do think that they have a police sketch that does happen, across the desk at that point as well too. So I forget exactly what the analogy was here. Oh, the MRI. It's not like the MRI is the police sketch. They have to have a doctor draw the MRI. It's like we're still waiting 2.5 days. The Pony Express hasn't brought them out. They shot down the writer, so we have to bring another writer in to go get the mail from the people that robbed it from the other writer. We have to actually send the cavalry and then bring it back. It's like, no, it's like, actually, we just have to go, fortunately, we just go scan that up and see what's going on there. So the fact that Dana White hasn't said anything about this as well too, chat. I'm not to implicate Dana White, but I don't know if Dana White's Dana White. Hey, Dana wiped this whole thing away if it's shady, that's for sure. But I don't know if Dana White is living a mob-free lifestyle. That's for sure, chat. I mean, we wouldn't be surprised. Do we need to do a celebrity rankings? What celebrity is most likely to be involved with the mob, chat? Dana White might be a top 5 pick. I don't know. Hey, shout out to Dana White. Hopefully he would just laugh about it. Be like, okay, if this is the one joke that Dana White doesn't laugh at, be like, oh, bummer. But, we're just hoping that he has a little sense of humor there. It's just saying so far that, yeah, doctors have, suspicion, but nothing concrete yet. At this point, he did release a statement. He's like, I'm beyond deteriorated. I will overcome. He's like, I'm going to jump into this recovery. Everybody else just leans in, but I'm going to jump in, and then I'm going to be right in there. Okay, chat, there we go. We got it back to the Tyson clip somehow. It is what it is. That is honestly the one McGregor highlight I will go back and watch at this point. I don't know. The fight highlights are pretty good. Like, again, he was obviously a good fighter. He had some iconic quick knockouts, and just the fact that he was like a knockout machine, I guess, was a reliable entertainment thing in some ways as well too. But I don't know, he doesn't have again, he doesn't have like a ton of great fights. It's not like he has, and that's again his greatness as a fighter in some ways as well earlier on, but it's not like he has Volkanovski versus Makhachev in there, where it's like, let me just go back and watch this just absolute display of technical brilliance between these two guys, and just the the best of the best fighting. What's that one John Jones versus Gustafsson or something like that, and it's just this Alexander Gustafsson just never getting dropped that entire fight. You're like, how is he never getting knocked out? Like, this is impossible. Like, that might be the most durable anybody has ever been in any fight ever, but. It's not like he has the amazing all-time fight. The Aldo would be that for the quickness of it, but again, the replay value of it is obviously not that great. So, again, for his legacy, I guess we didn't even continue the legacy point that we were going as well too. Like, it is, I think, a little it is almost maybe a little good for him that he's going to get the injury prone label, I think. Because again, you could almost point to that as one of the main derailings of his careers. Like, I do think that, again, obviously you want to give people room, the chance to, improve, grow, forgive, I guess, do all those things, as a, what do you say, as the utopian of it, in that way. But, for the actual Where were we going with this chat? Hey, yo, I don't even remember what we have for the legacy. Oh, he is, I think, going to, again, unfortunately, probably be remembered a little bit for some of the stuff that derailed his career off the court, as well as the on the court injuries and stuff. But at least now the injuries are, like, for him, piled up to the point that I think you do have to say that he is, like, almost an injury prone guy. Like, it does go a little Derrick Rose-esque in a way. And again, unfortunately for a guy like Derrick Rose, it's not like you put Derrick Rose in the Hall of Fame, because it's like, well, he would have been a Hall of Famer. And I know that, our guy Bill Simmons has talked about, like, having different versions of the Hall of Fame where you could have a area that represents the league in that type of way, where it's like, the couple of seasons that Derrick Rose had were as special as anybody that's ever played in the NBA, but unfortunately, injuries were cutting that short. Or, maybe like a runs Hall of Fame. Maybe that's what we need to do, though. Maybe that needs to be the rework for the Hall of Fame, Chad, is we elect guys' years. So, for LeBron, you have no reason to cut out any years. Like, I guess you could maybe cut out his rookie season if you wanted to, just to get the most perfect version of the career. But he also won Rookie of the Year that year and stuff. So, like, those are real accolades. That, like, why would you take that away just because he didn't score as many points per game? So, like, for, like, a guy like LeBron, you would, induct his whole legacy. You would induct all 21 seasons. Maybe, he has, like, a season 2 years from now where he scores, like, 13, he's like 15, 7 and 7. And it's like, okay, that team won like 42 games, didn't quite title chase the way we wanted to, and now he's retired. Maybe that's like Tony Parker. Like Tony Parker, you would induct basically every season up until Charlotte, and then you're like, we have no reason to induct that season, so we can just kind of leave it out of the Hall of Fame case. But you would basically be debating the runs. So you would be debating like Tony Parker's career versus Derrick Rose's career, essentially. And I do think that Tony Parker would get the nod in that case still, because again, Tony Parker has 5 titles, so it's still it's a little bit different. But if you were inducting, 4 years of Derrick Rose versus, like, think of like DeMar DeRozan. Like DeMar DeRozan's could score like 25,000, 30,000 points, and DeMar DeRozan might be like the 7th leading scorer in NBA history by the time he retires. And a good playoff success. Like, we can't take any of his playoff victories away, for sure. Not to say that we don't want to. I'm saying that just as a point of conversation, we don't have to diminish what he did in the playoffs. But there is obviously an extra level of success that he just was never able to, unfortunately, unlock as that number 1 player on a team, as you do when you're playing against LeBron James at that same time. It is what it is. I guess, he did unlock that. Again, he just never unlocked it over LeBron, unfortunately, is really the fact of the matter, because they were in an Eastern Conference Finals versus LeBron, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like, what else do you want him to do besides get the win over LeBron, which is, the thing that you want him to do. But also from a legacy standpoint, like, you basically accomplished everything that you could in that season from, a percentage standpoint. But, either way, it'd be like, is the couple of seasons that Derrick Rose had worse than the career that, another guy had, just because, and I guess not to diminish the other guy's career, but is it worse than that career just because it's so much shorter? It's like, just because this guy played the decade plus, just because he hit the 10-year mark, does that automatically make him more of a Hall of Famer than a guy like Derrick Rose or a guy like Brandon Roy or something like that? But, again, either way, like, I think that would be like the one weird silver lining for McGregor. That would be like, okay, now he's like an injury prone guy. He's not just a fighter that fell off, because that is what he was before this. You hate to say it, but again, he kind of was, the Kendrick bar. He did it to himself a little bit. Like, that's what he was. He was the UFC fighter that fell off a little bit and was hanging around and collecting some bags, and you can't blame him for that. Like, those were some massive paychecks. Again, if we're seeing $30 million on this one, like, you're gonna make those business moves, and as long as he is going to be a paycheck guy in any sense, he's going to continue to pursue those things. But yeah, for again, that would be, like I was saying, the weird legacy takeaway that could be spun in a positive for McGregor, that now his fall off is just injury prone instead of just is who he is as a fighter at this point in his career. But again, watching him going into that fight, I think he was going to lose that fight no matter what. It's just is who he is as a fighter at this point in his career. my confidence in him to win a fight. I don't really know who it would be, because I wouldn't know the name of the the quote unquote no name. Say he's fighting an up and comer, like I wouldn't know who that is, so I wouldn't know if I could confidently bet against them. But I do know that McGregor has gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I don't know if he's gonna have that underdog, pause, dig deep, and find it within himself to just get a win that he shouldn't have. It does seem like like we're saying, he's in the collect his paycheck era, and you know what? I'm not gonna say like, oh, we don't blame him, but he's gonna keep making that move until he cannot make that move. And literally, I guess now that he can't move because his legs broke. But no, I mean, from a business standpoint, I do wonder if this is like the last big main headline piece for McGregor. And he does have, I think, did he sign a 2-fight contract? I guess it said multi-fight. I don't know if it was a 2-fight specifically. But I can't imagine the UFC locked him down for like, we got to have McGregor for like 7 fights. Like renegotiate after 3 fights. He'll be fine. He's not getting better. Fighters, obviously, it's a little different than athletes. They are athletes, but a little different than NBA players or NFL players. We could have like that resurgence later on. Like your career, does usually have a pretty specific, downward physical trajectory that is gonna, mess some stuff up there either way. But I mean, chat, we can keep rambling about this. We got to get to our movie at some point. We just gotta, whoa, we gotta make bad driving sound effects is really what we gotta do there. We've gotta insert driving sound effect, pivot to Boys in the Hood, because we do have the 35th anniversary of a classic all-time great movie, John Singleton's debut, Boys in the Hood, which we will be queuing up right now on the TV right after this. Don't go anywhere, chat. We will be right back, watching along to this all-time great right after this. All right, chat, we are back, and we are having some technical difficulties getting the movie started up, so we will be just right back one more time. We just had to drop in for a little update because, we just didn't want to sit out too long. But, yeah, we will be right back. Take two on trying to get this movie queued back up. Hopefully that popcorn is, not quite done. You need a couple extra seconds, so we'll be right back. All right, here we are. We got it. It's going. 3, 2, 1. Start it up with us. Get it playing because it is a classic. Like we said, 35 years later, one of the greats. Rest in peace, of course, to the great director John Singleton. His first classic movie that he ever directed. He wrote it himself as well too. Wrote it as a film school project, and then it ends up getting made, of course, as a legit theatrical movie as his first debut project. And I mean, you hear the sound effects as well too. Starts immersing us into the parts of the world that he is showcasing in certain times of the movie here, and immersing us with some of the in a very sort of cyclical way that the movie plays out as well too. And I was gonna wait. I was gonna wait to bring up Kendrick. I'm just gonna bring him up now because every time I say think we start talking about like cyclical projects and things like that. Just there is a lot of influence here. But obviously the movie starts where spoiler alert. I guess if you've never seen it, the movie is going to end in some ways. But and obviously we do see at the end of the movie, in multiple fashions, the cycle that Singleton is showcasing in this movie. We do see that play out in several different ways by the end of the film. But there is also a very final version of it that we don't see play out on screen as well too. When we get to that, there is a little bit of a end credits situation, obviously with the Ice Cube character and with Doughboy, and we don't actually get to see physically on screen the end of his character. But I guess we could go back and actually like really listen to the beginning part there, but I almost wonder if again, the beginning of this movie is that cyclical, obviously, process, being carried out in some ways. Or, again, if the audio matches another scene in the movie as well, too, in certain ways. But, we also get a statistical title page as well. And this is one of the ones that actually, like, I don't know if we need to do like a statistical title page ranking for movies, but this one might actually be the number one of all time. Again, in a sobering way, obviously. It's a very sobering statistic that, Singleton is providing. But it is like actually, again, like what do you say? Something that, sets the movie up in a more realist, if we could tread lightly and say, with respect to the stories that again Singleton is highlighting here. Like it is a different thing than like The Town claiming, certain stats, or, certain horror movie, claiming this is a true sort of situation, or even like, do the Strangers have like a stats? They're like, the FBI has so many unsolved cases or whatever, or, like Peele's Us is like, so many underground tunnels or whatever. But, again, this one is obviously, much more grounded title card opening sequence. But Singleton, pulling from, like we're saying, maybe a horror movie thing that he saw there. I'm trying to think of where it would have been used outside of horror movies before this. And then I think after this, you do start getting it in action movies. But I think it would have been, and, again, not to say that that's what this movie is. This movie is obviously, got, like we're saying, end capped with, tragic events, but is also, such a beautiful, coming of age story for the characters involved as well too. Obviously, beautiful lives all the way around. But for the, for what, like we were saying, it is, in that type of thing. And for Singleton as well too, obviously, again, this being his debut project as well too. His, obviously, it's, there's nothing wrong with your debut project being your best project. Again, if it's a album or if it's a movie as well too. I guess it's literally different for everybody. You could say it's a common thing or whatever. You can find your list of guys in either way that had their best movie as their first movie. It's like, in music circles there is the debut album feature, sort of thing, but also there's like the second album. It's like, is the second album your best album? It's like, is your seventh album, what's that? For movies, I was like, is your fourth movie your best movie? Like, I don't know. Is Goodfellas is like, way up the line for Scorsese. So it's like, is your 13th movie, of all time? If you get to make 13 great movies, is your 13th one, it's because we don't want to throw the unlucky number out there. But, is that like your best movie all time? Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just the, sort of with the filmmaker, obviously the pieces fall together in the right sort of way. Obviously, Coogler now with Sinners, and not to say that Sinners or Coogler can never top that as well too, but that's just the type of movie that's so well crafted that, get all the pieces, falling in line for that movie as well too, like the performances and the cinematography and the music and just like literally every single piece of that movie being absolutely perfect. And that's like, again, his fifth movie. So, it's different for everybody. Obviously, Coogler's first movie is a great movie as well too in Fruitvale Station. But, in terms of just, again, like, just every piece of Sinners is just so 10 out of 12 out of 10 excellent in that movie, that it's just, highlighted in, a different way, just in the scale of, cinema, and, and as well too, just it being a little bit more of a pop culture hit at the time. I'm sure that factors into it as well. But, this is definitely, got the same sort of, obviously in the moment type of stuff as well too. I don't know exactly what the numbers are here. Yeah, this 10 timed its box office, its budget at the box office for its release back in the day. So, again, I don't know what the margins were for like some of the ones we just saw now with like Obsession or whatever. Again, that's like, the seventh highest grossing horror film of all time. So talking a little bit different there. Yeah, that had a $750,000 budget. So that is, that's crazy. The margins, that's in like the Blair Witch Project sort of situation there. But for, again, for this was still a major hit at the time, and has obviously, just continued to grow in popularity and continue to grow in importance as well too. And that just is gonna, that's just a thing that happens with time as well too. As time goes on, this just becomes more and more important. It's a foundational movie, and if the foundation is a strong foundation, if it's a good lane, the foundation is being laid in, then as the projects that get stacked on that foundation continue to get higher, higher and higher, obviously, again, the foundation just becomes more and more important over time. So I was thinking about this as well too. And this is maybe one that Singleton doesn't get compared to quite a bit. But again, we just had this movie on last week, so this is why I was kind of thinking about him in comparison to this guy. But last week we had what was it, the 45th anniversary for Escape from New York. And I was thinking about Singleton kind of in comparison to Carpenter a little bit, in the way that they just kind of helped create a lane of movie, and obviously Spike Lee as well too. Before Singleton, started paving a way in Hollywood for, if you could say like a sort of genre movie, obviously paving the way for, diverse storytelling, diverse casting, and just for, paving the way for opening up some opportunities in Hollywood for some different people. But, again, I think Singleton kind of also begins to, and at this time as well too, we did the New Jack City rewatch in 91. This movie, we did that earlier. This movie dropped a little earlier in 91 as well too. And Ice Cube in 91. We could get to the Ice Cube year that he's having, but you have, Ice Cube and NWA, hip hop is obviously, emerging as a mainstream, cultural force at this time. And that starts to be reflected in the movies as well too, not just in the fact that, again, it's like diversity in movies per se, but just, again, a movie like Boys in the Hood, like you literally do get a genre. And, again, obviously, we are just referring to, again, the genre movies as we say this, but you do get the genre from this time period for the 90s and then into the 2000s of the Hood classic movie. And Singleton, obviously, again, Spike Lee is, very, very influential in creating that early on, but Singleton and Boys in the Hood is right there being that foundational movie. And I was thinking about, again, like who were the filmmakers to like create a genre out of their films. And again, I don't want to just like reduce it to that as well too. Again, it's also opening up, just it's also being foundational for the industry as well too. But you also, again, can't deny the classics that these films are, and the if you could say respectfully, just sort of the bucket that they go into. Again, it's not a bad thing that there is a an overlap in the again, like, what do you say, like the genre of the film, like a slasher film or whatever, like, I guess I don't necessarily need to compare it to that, but just that since Carpenter is on the mind, again, I think Singleton is obviously like a foundational piece there for that type of movie, and that is just an even rarer group of filmmaker in a sense. You have the filmmakers that have been able to obviously, do you say like perfect a genre, or, be really great at making movies? Again, speaking of Carpenter, like every filmmaker after that, like Wes Anderson's Scream. Wes Anderson's Scream would be crazy. Wes Craven, again, like Wes Craven, I guess, is he like doing John Carpenter? But, you get so many guys after that getting careers off of these slasher movies, and even still, just the idea of that format of movie, that stalker sense, and that the tension that Carpenter is creating in that movie. I guess we're talking more Halloween than, specifically Escape from New York, which is the movie that we did last week. I don't know if Escape from New York created a genre, the state becomes a prison movie, which would be interesting. There have been like online conversations. Is this like a Reddit thing? I don't know if this is like a Reddit thing. I guess I'm saying this is an online conversation, but I gotta be honest, this was like conversations that we would have in like, as like kids, would be like, oh, are they ever going to turn like North Dakota into a prison? Actually, I think there might have been like a comedian that had a bit about this at one point. It was like, oh, they should just turn North Dakota into a prison. Just put a wall around it and, just hey, just do that. So maybe that needs to be a movie, because if you go like a Wind River escape from, the snowy North Dakota situation, like, I guess now, again, we're obviously, not getting, if we're going Wind River, we're getting a little more commentary than maybe Carpenter was going for with his Escape from New York. But, either way, I guess there is a potential lane of movie there. But obviously, again, as a director, he created a whole lane of movie with what he was able. And I'm sure Halloween was built off of things before that as well, too. But just the popularity of that movie, and in the modern times, that movie becomes the movie that is labeled, the foundational movie for that slasher horror genre. And I guess Psycho is like kind of a slasher movie in some ways. So, again, like, obviously, hot take, Alfred Hitchcock. Turns out he was also laying foundational pieces for cinema at the, before John Carpenter was as well too. But again, Carpenter brought that into a, obviously the Halloween aesthetic there, but just the way that he was able to, craft his villain specifically. And, I guess Norman Bates a little kind of has some of the franchise ability that Michael Myers does. They tried obviously to do a couple, and I don't think that he's had, even in like a, like a corny Psycho movie, it does for some reason there's just not the same charm there as there is with like the Halloween franchise. And maybe that's the repeat characters as well too. Jamie Lee Curtis being in a bunch of them, and Donald Pleasance being in a ton of them as well too. That really helps as well, just their presence, more so than just always having the same character of Michael Myers. Though again, there's some that like don't necessarily, I guess it's like, is 3 maybe doesn't have any of them, and it's still, again, obviously a watchable movie as well. But for, again, Singleton, I think he does, again, have to be in that extra, obviously hallowed tier of filmmaker that are like legitimately the foundational filmmakers of, cinema in some ways. Like, like Michael Mann with Heat. Like, Heat as a movie is one of those foundational movies that you could just, blueprint so many movies off of, and is a real, again, role model, a real pathway for a lot of successful action movies. But for, the actual genre itself, you can't say that like Heat created the heist movie or Heat created the action movie genre. Again, it created the blueprint for a type of action movie, versus I think Carpenter, created a more specific, obviously storytelling situation here for what he was going for. Chat, did we just lose sound, or did just the or what we watching just cut out? I don't know, because we had the gunshots going. I guess we have the scene right now where the guy breaks into the house, which of course is an iconic scene. We're kind of letting the movie go by here without getting, of course, into the moments, but there is so much to talk about with the personalities. This is just one of the great people involved movies, again, cast movies as well too, but then you get Singleton, making the movie and stuff. Like, it just, the people involved in the movie, it really is one of the great movies of all time. And it's even I think a little more rare as well too, for being such a launch point for so many people as well. Like, it literally is almost like a Godfather type movie in a sense. And I guess The Godfather is another movie like that. Like, it is obviously, again, just, regarded as a well-made, great movie, but it is also sort of, it didn't make the mob movie. Turns out they actually loved making mob movies in the 30s and the 40s and 50s. They've always loved mob movies. That's one of the, that honestly might be, I guess, like the rom-com in some ways as well too, the romance movie. But the mob movie is right up there with the the oldest movie that they've been making in Hollywood. But the actual sort of sprawling epic, the way that kind of we see it sometimes now, Goodfellas, American Gangster, some of that stuff is, again, going back to obviously, The Godfather. And this is a little bit of, again, just being a launch point for so many different people. This is that movie in that rare sense. Again, like we're saying, there are movies that can just be stacked casts. Like, we get to go back to Goodfellas. Like, if we were saying, compared to The Godfather. Like, maybe just in terms of the conversation, I don't know if this would make it a better all-time movie, but it would be different from Goodfellas in the fact that Goodfellas, maybe outside of Lyotta, wasn't a launch point for those guys. It is a legacy moment for those guys, and I guess Pesci, was ascending into a different level at that time. But, it was a renaissance for De Niro in the 90s. It was a renaissance for Scorsese. I guess, I don't know the entire names of everybody cast throughout the entire movie. But, again, obviously a lot of veteran guys that have been around for a long time. This is literally, like we're saying, Singleton's first movie. Ice Cube is emerging as a superstar in 91. You've got so many supporting actors in this movie that are just going to be iconic, not even just like Oscar level people throughout the course of their careers. Like, you have, Regina Hall, Nia Long in this movie. Like, Morris Chestnut, obviously, in this movie as well. Cuba Gooding in this movie. Like, it's just like, how many, it's like a Jay-Z song. Like, how many stars are, out of Singleton's crib? Hey, yo. How many billionaires, Morris Chestnut is? Hey, yo. Morris Chestnut, they didn't believe in us, but Singleton did. Hey, yo. Morris Chestnut, I think that is part of the Jay-Z. I think every Jay-Z verse now, he just mentions that. But that's part of that verse. How many nobody touched a Billy before Hove did. I think it's part of what he goes there. I guess we'll have to listen to it a couple more times, get it down bar for bar. But this is like the Jay-Z song of the Jay-Z song of movies. Like, every billionaire in the rap game is just a guy that was at Rock Nation at one point. It's just a guy that was in this movie, or just an actor in general. We didn't even mention Fishburne and Bassett. We're really talking about like the real launch points for we're just talking about like just the starts for this career. Obviously, Fishburne is, you could make a case that this is arguably his best role in some ways. Just the pound for pound acting ability that he has here. Again, he's had so many iconic things early on in his career. Was it Platoon? That was the action movie that he starred in, or was it? Hey, what was that first movie that he was in? I guess Eden is Stage. 76. 75. Cornbread Earl and Me. I think is that a basketball situation? I think it has some basketball players. It has Jamal Wilkes. Hey, yo, shout out. And then Fast Break as well too. So basketball star Lawrence Fishburne. Apocalypse Now. That's the movie that he's in. So he's in Apocalypse Now in 79. He's in Earl and Me in 75. But Fast Break and Apocalypse Now in 79, then 80, 82 is, 79 is really when he starts getting things going. Death Wish 2 in 1982. Hey, yo. Color Purple, 85. School Days, 88. King of New York, 90. He's also in Class Action in 1991 as well, too. And, again, Boys in the Hood is a different level of ascension here for Fishburne at this point, but again, is still a little bit of a name here as well. So just if we were going back to again, who were the new names, again, that would be sort of the Godfather 2 factor, where you have Pacino early on and De Niro early on as well. But I don't know if it has the depth. I guess is Khan might be in the first one, or is he in the second one? I guess again, that just shows you my knowledge of that movie, I guess. But yeah, let's see. Angela Bassett before this in the 80s here was up to, let's see what we've got going on here. Oh, I guess this was launching for her as well too. She did, I guess, FX in 86, but only has a role as a stewardess in Kindergarten Cop in 1990. And then, 1991, Boys in the Hood. So, put her on the list as well too for what we were saying for, again, the launch point careers for this movie. So that's hey, yo, that's even that just puts us in a whole another level as well too. You get the launch point for Angela Bassett as well. Come on, chat. What are we doing? Like, it's just like every person in this movie is a star. Like, how does that, that just that's the type of thing they say, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, that just happens every once in a while, and you just have to, you have to appreciate the movie when it does happen for what it is. Because again, like, I'm just reading, like, where is the weakness in this cast? Like, how do you get everybody that's ever been a good actor to be in the movie at the same time? Like, it's just crazy. Ice Cube is probably, again, maybe pound for pound the worst actor, and maybe the second highest boxing, grossing star on here behind Lawrence Fishburne. If we're just going box office for all these people. I guess Nia Long now, being in the Michael Jackson movie, but that's another role that has really, added to the resume for the acting ability, if that makes sense. I think obviously we've never doubted, that's never been doubted in a sense, but I think the real, and I guess just as the career goes, too, you get different parts even in your adult career than you do. Obviously, it's not just like, oh, once you turn 25 to 35, now it's like the kid career is over and now the adult career. You have different stages. Obviously, you're playing different adults in different stages of life and different, levels of ambition and different levels of, some people are obviously looking forward in their careers, some people are looking backwards, different levels of strength and trauma and events experienced. And again, just you have to obviously, again, find those roles that can morph with those things throughout your career as well too. And again, for her to be just to have that strong of a performance in that type of role in the Michael movie is, again, crazy for just continuing to add to the the great resume there. But again, just to look back at this movie and be like, everybody has just a major moment at some point here as well is pretty insane. So this is really one of the, I think, again, really one of the, is it Criteria Collection Library? Yeah, 2002 Library of Congress, National Film Registry. But it really is, one of the most important movies of all time in that sense. Like, it really checks so many boxes that, again, even if we were just going for, again, the basic, let's rank the greatest movies of all time, like, they don't check the boxes and have the same difficulties at same way, have the same sort of impressive thing. I mean, you have your own challenges when you have to bring together a group of stars. It's like an NBA team. You have to, it's like a coach, a coach coaching a group of free agents, veteran guys brought together. I guess like Mike, the Spurs and the Knicks this year is a perfect example. Like, the Spurs is obviously a special rare team that you go, oh, how do you build this type of thing? How does this ever happen? You get all these draft picks and stuff aligned in the lottery every year. And, New York is obviously the free agents. You get the guys, the different points of their careers, the different peaks of their powers. Again, that's like the director, again, making your fourth, your fifth, your sixth movie at that point. The guys have been around a little bit. Not their first team, not the, initial feel good starting point. It almost has like the vibe of like that TV show where it's like the cast of a TV show. You look back at like old like Fresh Prince cast photos and you're just like, oh, look at Will Smith, starting off his career, and oh, look at all the people that were at the guest stars and just everybody involved and literally any show. I guess the thing with TV shows, people having the movie career specifically sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, or like, an old SNL cast looking back and be like, oh, I can't believe they had all of this SNL talent at one time. But and SNL might be the only, well, I guess that's another TV, but yeah, again, TV might be the only more common comp for this, because you kind of have to cast new talent sometimes more often than not, especially I guess maybe back then for the sitcom stuff. I don't know exactly why, but it's just, I guess, the dynamic of the day. It is what it is. But and I guess, people just kind of getting locked into roles too. It's not like you could just constantly move from 10-year TV role to 10-year TV role. But, either way, again, for movies, I can't really think of other movies that have launched careers, as much as this. Let's see, best launching careers movies ever. Hopefully somebody has this list out there. Let's see what's going on. Best launching careers movies of all time. I guess, again, from the director's standpoint, you could go get into the individual debuts. Like, Pulp Fiction is, Tarantino's first movie, right? So it's like Pulp Fiction for Tarantino is, that ascension moment. But the cast itself, again, Travolta, perfect example. Travolta had been around for a while. That was, a renaissance moment for Travolta. Maybe Samuel had been around for a while at that point as well too. Maybe he was starting to break into some more leading man type stuff, but Bruce Willis had already done Die Hard. Like, again, the cast of that movie was an impressive cast, which again, it's like Tarantino, it's like an early Phil Jackson, like he has to go in and like deal with all the talent, and like that's, an impressive thing in itself as well too. But, for the movie itself to have this many factors, this many people starting off is pretty crazy. This article says 15 films that launched iconic careers. So it's just like, individual movie, individual people. So it's like Tom Cruise in Risky Business. Was like everybody in Risky Business like a superstar, but this was like their first movie? I don't know. Leon the Professional has for Natalie Portman, I guess, on there. Die Hard, yeah, again for Bruce Willis. Mary Poppins for Julie Andrews. Oh, like Good Will Hunting. I guess would be a good one because you do have at least, Damon and Affleck. But that is almost a cheat because they're buds. So, they're almost like at that time, you have to cast them both together. Hey, yo, it's their script, it's their movie, it's their story. They're friends, they're partners. Like that is the duo. It's not the same thing. It's not like Singleton and Ice Cube. Like I think maybe they met early on and stuff, but it's not like they were like, college roommates together. And we're like, let's, we've had this vision for a movie. Like, yeah, this was Singleton making a movie. Ice Cube made his own song. Singleton made his own movie. He cast Ice Cube. These guys were, and these actors were starting their own careers in their own ways. And they just all happened to emerge at this perfect starting point. It says, what's eating Gilbert Grape? So Johnny Depp, Juliette Lewis, is DiCaprio in this as well too? It says, what's eating Gilbert Grape? Won DiCaprio's first nomination. Okay, wait a second. So let's look this one up real quick as well too. This is another, this might be like 7th or 8th on the list at this point. Like there's some strong names. Eating Grape? No, eating Gilbert Grape. Oh, what's eating? Maybe I should just type in the title correctly. Would help out. Oh, here we go. Okay. Eating Gilbert Grape. The Wikipedia did not like that as a start here for the search. So yeah, Johnny Depp, Juliette Lewis, Mary Sternberg, Stenbergen, Leo DiCaprio, John C. Reilly. Early on, this might be an early John C. Reilly role. Oh, he may have some 88 credits in there as well too. Let's see what we've got going on. Okay, yeah, he had credits in 88, 89, 90, 91, and 2. Gilbert Grape's 93. So yeah, he was at Days of Thunder in 1990. So yeah, he'd been around at that point. I think John C. Reilly was born having been around. So, I don't think he technically gets a film debut. He's just kind of always been around. For Johnny Depp, Nightmare on Elm Street, Private Resort, Platoon, Cry Baby, Edward Scissorhands, Freddy Dead, The Final Nightmare, and then What's Eating Gilbert Grape 93. So again, he had been around a little bit at this point. And then I assume Leo had, a couple of roles under his belt as well too. Titanic's 97. It looks like, just quick scan through the Wikipedia here. Yeah, 97 for Titanic. Okay, wait, no, Gilbert Grape might be early enough on here. He had Critters 3 in 91, direct to video. He plays a guy named Josh. And then Poison Ivy in 1992, erotic thriller film directed by Kate Shea, stars Drew Barrymore, Sarah Gilbert, Tom Skirt, and Cheryl Ladd. Original music composed by David Michael Johnson. The film was shot in L.A. What is this movie about, chat? Poison Ivy. I guess we just have to read the plot. There's like no synopsis. Hey, yo. It says Sylvia Cooper is a troubled teenage student at an expensive private school. She meets her and befriends a poor, street-smart girl who's... A ghoul is a different movie. A street-smart girl whose name she does not know. When a dog is hit by a car, the girl kills it by striking with a metal bar. Sylvie gives the girl the nickname Ivy after seeing a stick-on tattoo of a plant she has on her thigh. Okay, this movie is off to a crazy start. And then in 93, anyways, back to DiCaprio. He plays Tobias Wolff in This Boy's Life and Arnold Grape in Gilbert Grape. Honestly, maybe in running for one of the best movie name years that anybody has ever had. That's a pretty good double combo. Tobias Wolff and Arnold Grape is pretty strong. I mean, he does a lot of one-off movie years after this, so he doesn't really have anything else that can be in the competition. The only other double movie year is 2 years, 95. He does The Basketball Diaries, The Quick and the Dead, and The Total Eclipse. But the movie names themselves. Oh, he does, I guess, Romeo and Hank Lacker in Marvin's Room in the same year, but not quite as strong there. For 98, we keep adding them here. 2002, okay, he's back in 02 with double, and then 06. Okay, he still keeps working. 10. I scrolled through the page too quick. It is what it is. You got me. I mean, 2019, he did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Fire on Ice. I don't know what movie this. That's not a movie. Documentary explores potential extinction level event caused by Arctic methane release. Oh no, Chet. Oh, produced and narrated by Leo DiCaprio. Oh, okay. And he does Don't Look Up at the same time, or the next year, or 2 years, 2021. So shout out to Leo for getting the message out there. But I guess what's eating Gilbert Grape is again like a minor sort of situation there. We get Margot Robbie in 2013's Wolf of Wall Street. Is that enough? Is that just a top 5, movie introduction movie on its own? Just Margot Robbie enough? I don't know, but again, we need more. We need more cast members than just one. Oh yeah, Hollywood. Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween for sure. Keanu in The Matrix, I guess. Oh, Carrie-Anne Moss as well too. Oh, Dreamgirls. True, yeah, Beyonce and that. Jennifer Hudson as well too in that one. Eddie Murphy wins an Oscar. That's getting pretty close. Beyonce was a major movie star then for sure, but obviously, the music career is the career for the most part. But the movie career is, a fun movie career as well too. What do you have? The Fighting Temptations, and then what's Cadillac Records? Is that the other ones? Are those both with Cuba Gooding Jr.? So maybe there's the Beyonce Cuba Gooding Jr. is like I guess I don't know who another rom-com situation is where it's like these people just keep doing movies together, like Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell or something. I don't think they've done another movie together, but they probably will at some point. Hot take, we're calling it now. But yeah, this might be like we're saying. I think it is. I think it has to be. Again, The Godfather Part 2 is pretty strong. De Niro and Pacino both pretty much getting their careers launched out of that, but it's still only 2. If we can say only 2, and then we say Singleton is directing this as well, like Francis Ford Coppola, I guess, had been he had The Godfather 1 at least under his belt at that point, but I'm assuming he's old enough. He had some other movies that were around. Let's see, there have been throughout history, I guess, a couple of the more Francises. So he's not, the first one that's popped there. Let's see. Yeah, Dementia 13. You're a Big Boy Now. Finian's Rainbow. The Rain People. And then The Godfather. Oh, chat. He had The Conversation and The Godfather Part 2 in the same year? Jeez Louise. Francis Ford Coppola. No wonder he got a lot of cachet for a long time. That's pretty good. I guess The Outsiders in 83 is not bad. Like, he really did, honestly. I don't mean to do a Francis Ford Coppola revisit, but after Apocalypse Now in 79, he really doesn't do that much. I mean, The Outsiders is good. Like, it's Bram Stoker's. Like, you can find enjoyabilities in a lot of his movies, for sure. But just in terms of, again, the same sort of, like, big level cultural critique or cultural critical acclaimed movies. Like, he obviously, again, he had a 4-movie heater that was really an all-time heater. He really, going back to Derrick Rose, is Francis Ford Coppola the Derrick Rose of the situation? Or he might be a little Conor McGregor, so I don't know. But, he kind of, did he, like, blow out his knee after Apocalypse Now and just couldn't make a movie quite the same? It was like, okay, in Outsiders, he kind of got back to, he's back to an all-star game. But, it was just never on All-NBA again after that. Because that just is, like, that's pretty crazy. Again, this is turning into Francis Ford Coppola, revisit. But you just go The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, and Apocalypse Now, and then One from the Heart right after that. Never heard of it. But and then The Rain People on the other side. I'm almost like nervous to figure out what that movie is, to be honest. Any movie title with the blank people is like from like the 60s and the 70s. You're like, okay, like, what's Francis Ford Coppola's take on The Rain People, chat? Hey, I don't know what's going on there, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I guess it is what it is. But yeah, that's like that 4-movie run is like Francis Ford Coppola is the greatest director of all time. It's like he's made a great movie since '79, but yeah, again, that's pretty strong there. It is what it is. Hey, chat, shout out to the Ice Cube song for getting us locked back into the movie. It is what it is. We need the soundtrack. Singleton, though, again, it's the beauty of the crossover that he is bringing to the stage here, bringing to the table. And speaking of great years, again, Ice Cube has had in 91 is having one of the best years that anybody has ever had. You have the album and the movie is, both major properties in each of their respective, parts of the entertainment circle. And, of course he has a major career in both things going forward. But, has anybody again had this type of double whammy type year? Most, and we've talked about as well too, the sort of crossover that has changed in the past about, the sort of rapper actor situation. Like, it's just obviously not as strong of a connection as it used to be. And there are definitely some, very, very active people that are, pursuing in both for sure. But again, not the same type of way. And most of it is in TV and not movies. Honestly, Kid Cudi might be the number one. We do ASAP for sure right now, but Kid Cudi in the X franchise, like if we're talking active rapper, active actor, like he might be the number one at this point. I'm trying to think. Hey, yo, again, I guess that's not a bad thing if it's Kid Cudi, but again, Ice Cube was, like we're saying, in the arguably the biggest rapper at the time, and in one of the most impactful movies, one of the best movies of the year. So it'd be like, if if Kendrick was in Dune Part 3. It's just like, oh yeah, or the Odyssey as well. I guess it'd be like if Travis Scott was in the Odyssey. Hey, yo. No, but I guess again, Travis Scott's like not just now starting his career. I guess if SD Kid was like admitted he was Timothy Chalamet, is kind of what it would be like in some ways as well too. If like Ice Cube had a secret identity, if he like if Ice Cube had like a marshmallow, Ice Cube type mask that he put on, that would be, hey yo chat, here we go, this is our old guy moment. That would be kind of cold if he did that. I'm not gonna lie. Like if he had an Ice Cube situation, then I mean, I guess we're not, what are we saying, the Ice Cube is back in 91's breaking ground. We're telling the guy to shouldn't have a secret, he should have a secret identity. That's not what we're saying. I'm just saying that I guess now I guess SD Kid, it's a little bit of a different situation. But either way, the point is, there isn't imagine Timothy Chalamet is like the best rapper actor we have right now, and we don't even realize it, chat. Hey, yo. It's almost like NBA, it's more an NBA rapper situation. Obviously, it's not movies, but just in terms of like where the crossover is at. Hey, yo, now we're just turning into old guys puns all over the place. But he is what are we saying? Definitely a little bit more there now as well too. But don't again, we do like the fact that obviously Ice Cube was cooking at the time, and again, the early 90s both ways, he was still able to be dominant. You got Friday, you got Death Certificate, you still at the peak of his powers for multiple years. So it's not like he had to make necessarily like the concession. It's not like a Tom Cruise, like, oh, I'm gonna only make Mission Impossibles now at this point. Like Ice Cube's just gonna make movies. He's like, okay, I can still be elite all the way around. It proves that the path is there if somebody wanted to do it. And I don't really know why rappers don't want to act in movies. Like J. Cole, like why hasn't J. Cole been in a movie? Why hasn't Kendrick been in a movie? Hey, I know I just said Cole because we said Kendrick earlier, but Kendrick has done some cameo stuff in TV shows, and he has been really, really good. But and he does seem like, again, the artistic type of guy. He commits to things, obviously. We saw his commitment to the rap battle. We see his artistic commitment, like in his acting commitment that he has had in the few roles that he has shown. Like, it does seem like he has that ability there, even in his music videos. Like, you just see that could be a lane that he could get into if he wanted to. Or even like, nobody's obviously doing like a Prince Purple Rain situation now where they're like gonna, cook up their own movie. Or what's this movie that we're seeing on Tubi now as well too, called like Graffiti Bridge or something like that. I'm like, I didn't even know Prince did another movie. I didn't even know Purple Rain had a sequel. Hey, yo. But, again, nobody's obviously doing that. But nobody's doing the Ice Cube thing as well, too. And then, he obviously goes on to write a movie as well in Friday. So he's a guy that can, make his own album. He can star in somebody else's movie and do, like, real character work as well too. Again, Doughboy is obviously, a great complex character, and somebody that is different from, again, Craig is obviously, again, do you say like he's doing character work with with the character in Friday, but for for the differences in those guys, obviously there is a difference in their performances there, and they are written differently enough that you could probably manage to pull that off. But either way, Ice Cube is still able to bring a different aesthetic to either one of those. Like, again, he does play obviously the tougher, older brother type of situation there, or again, just the tougher sibling situation that he does play in this movie. And then when he is in Friday, he is kind of playing that bumbling around type of guy, with that type of energy. And again, you say like Ice Cube loses himself into his parts that you don't even realize it, but he does. Like I'm saying, there is a variety there. And then obviously maybe like you get to a role like 21 Jump Street. Again, you wouldn't say like he's doing like major acting in that movie, but even that has still got like him leaning into some of that tough guy caricature snarling energy that you see with Ice Cube. I guess in that kind of comic, snappiness that he had, that is something that he would maybe lean into a little bit more in the 2000s. Is he in that movie Fist Fight? I think so. That might have been in like the Ice Cube is going to lead all of the 2010s comedies sort of run that we were on there for a second. Ice Cube Renaissance, he was Jump Streets and Fist Fight. But there was a moment where it was like trying to happen, and it got like 80% of the way there. I don't know. Here, let me look that back up real quick and see what we got going on, because we said obviously the box office, the success that he's had there has been something that you can't deny. That is for sure. So yeah, America's Most Wanted was in 90, I guess, and then Death Certificate would have been the one in 91, October 29th of 1991. But yeah, America's Most Wanted, May 16th of 1990, and then The Predator, 92. So I guess he does kind of hand off a little bit there to the film career in some ways. But again, obviously drops a couple while still managing to be in that transitional period at that time. Oh, Barbershop. Hey, yo, how do we not bring up Barbershop as well? I guess, that's starting to go to 02. But later on, I guess is what I'm thinking here. Yeah, Jump Street 12, 20. Oh, yeah, Ride Along. He does Jump Street in 21, Ride Along, and Jump Street, 22 Jump Street in 2014. I guess Ride Along 2 in 2016. Barbershop, The Next Cut. Fist Fight in 2017. And then that's kind of the end of it there for a second. And then I guess Ride Along 3 is also in development. But again, he kind of had a little bit of a lane again from 2012 to 2017. It's a 5-year run where Ice Cube is like a face on comedy posters in movies, and it's like kind of he's gonna be the reason that he's selling the movie. Like Fist Fight is that, like it is, him and who's this guy that he's with? Oh yeah, Charlie Day. I was trying to even remember who it is, and I guess him making that transition, I guess, from the what's the show? Always Sunny, I believe, is the show that he's on. He's making that TV transition, I guess, probably in 2017 there, or is he attempting to? And then I guess since then, Ice Cube's done the High Note, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, which I think maybe did get good reviews, but it's a voice role. And then War of the Worlds, which did not get good reviews. And Anaconda, hey, yeah, I guess maybe that one got okay reviews. But maybe 2025 Ice Cube is in the running for one of the worst movie years of all time. I don't know. But yeah, not as the same level of success over the last couple as maybe he has. But yeah, that's again, that is, him getting into a level of movie stardom that, I don't, do you say not a lot of guys get into, but still it takes that is like him being a legit movie star in some ways, not even just like a legit bit part guy or just a legit star. Again, A$AP Rocky is obviously a legit star right now. I don't know if you would say A$AP Rocky is a legit movie star. You could not put him on a poster with, guess I you know, I don't want to disrespect anybody in TV right now because I don't know that many people in TV, so I'm only gonna name like a good show. But it'd be or like like Kit Harington or something. It'd be like if they were like trying to like start a movie. It's like if ASAP Rocky and Kit Harington were in a movie. Like I don't know, maybe people go see that movie because it's like okay, that is like a weird enough cast. I might just have to go see that experiment. But that's probably not the strongest box office open you're gonna get is those two guys. But that's kind of what they're going for there for that situation. And again, that for him to be able to go out and lead a movie, that is pretty rare. I mean, could Cuba Gooding Jr. I guess and he led this movie as well too. But consistently throughout the course of his career, like is he the same? Is he as bankable a star as Ice Cube? Again, from a movie standpoint. Like, I think you really do have to, make the case there. Either way, Chestnut, I think, is probably the best pound for pound. Is he the best pound for pound? I guess Cuba Gooding Jr. is pretty good as well, too. Hey, sorry, chat. Hydration break. I think maybe Morris Chestnut has the best filmography. I guess non-Ice Cube filmography. I guess maybe even with including Ice Cube as well too. But here, let's double check and see what we have got going on, because he is in Boys in the Hood, obviously. I guess role in Last Boy Scout as well too. Higher Learning, G.I. Jane, The Best Man, The Brothers. 2 Can Play That Game as well with Vivica Fox. That's right. Like Mike, Half Past Dead. Hey, yo. Breaking All the Rules. That's right. That's a classic. Him and Jamie Foxx. Gabrielle Union, Perfect Holiday, The Game Plan. Hey, yo. Is this The Rock on The Game Plan, chat? This one we might have to catch up on. I'm not gonna lie. And then The Best Man Holiday, The Perfect Guy, Heist in 2015 with De Niro. Hey, yo. When The Bow Breaks in 2016, and then Girls Trip in 2017 as well too. Cameo role in that one there. But yeah, I mean, again, obviously iconic run of movies in the 90s with Boys in the Hood, Higher Learning, Best Man, Brothers, 2 Can Play That Game, Like Mike, Breaking All the Rules. I mean, chat, that's a pretty good decade run for Morris Chestnut. Those are all classic movies. And then People magazine named Chestnut one of the sexiest men alive in 2015. I mean, chat, that just shows you where we're at. It took till 2015. Hey, yo. He's been married to Pam Bice Chestnut, B-Y-S-E, since 1995. Hey, yo, shout out, chat. What a guy. In 1998, Chestnut won the Madden Bowl video game competition. So Morris Chestnut, just a vicious Madden player, apparently. Literally the best Madden player in the nation in 1998. What an athlete. Hey, yo, we knew it, Chad. That's why he's so good in all those roles, like The Game Plan. He just had the experience. To prepare for reprising of... Hey, yo, it says to prepare for reprising his role... Oh, as a professional football player. I thought I was going to say as a professional football player. But yeah, that's right. Lance Sullivan. He does play for the Giants. I forgot about that. In the Best Man Holiday. Chestnut trained with celebrity fitness trainer Obi Obadike and to get into shape. This inspired him to become his co-author for his fitness book, The Cut, in April 18th of 2017. Morris Chestnut has a fitness book? This book contains exercise drills and recipes. Is there an audio book for The Cut? Let me see if I can look up the Cut audiobook real quick and see what we have got going on. Can we just be listening to Morris Chestnut's workout advice while we're at the gym? How does that work? What's it called? The Cut, Morris Chestnut? Will this... Yo, chat, is that a pause? Here it is. 5-minute download? Is this it? The download thousands of... This might be it. Lose 10 pounds and sculpt your best... And lose up to 10 pounds in 10 days and sculpt your best body. The Cut. Morris Chestnut and Obi Obadike. Hey, yo, only a 5-minute read? I mean, should we just listen to this right now? Hey, yo, are we allowed to? I mean, we're kind of just like promoting their book form, I guess. But is this their free trial? Oh, this might be a free trial. I'm not sure. Oh, it's not even a free trial. It's 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Almost. It's not even 5 minutes. But you know, they're just so efficient with giving fitness advice. That's all they need. We love to see it, Chet, a pamphlet. The first audio pamphlet on Spotify. We got the cut by Morris Chestnut. We love to see it. We'll just keep just this will be playing in the background, I guess. It is what it is. But it said in 2029, Chestnut actress Mandy Kaling announced the nominations for the 82nd Golden Globes. Hey, yo, chat. Maybe we get Chestnut nominated for one of these. We just have him announcing it. At the ceremony, Chestnut and Callie Kuko presented the Best Screenplay Award. Hey, yo, did he retire? Like, what's going on? Like, why has Chestnut not have a role since 2017? Has he been on TV? Oh, okay. He was on Reasonable Doubt. Oh, recurring cast, main cast season 2, recurring cast season 3. After Midnight, he's in an episode there. Number 1 on the call sheet. He's in that as well too. And then he's Dr. Watson and Watson. Oh, Chad, I forgot he was on the CBS show Watson. Hey, yo. This is what happens when we're not on Paramount Plus enough. So he's Dr. Watson right now on CBS. Oh, Chad, I mean, nothing against his role as Watson, but let's get him back in a movie or two. Hey, yo. There wasn't one role in the Michael film for Morris Chestnut? Hey, yo. I mean, Chad, they are making Michael too. I did see that, and I think the report that I saw was that it was 25% done. So, yeah, I guess I don't really know what that means. I don't know what they think 25% is, but I assume that they have a lot of that, you know, watching the movie, it seemed like one of the initial takeaways was, you know, in some ways this was a good thing as well too, you know, the need for a second movie. Like, it is just, again, there is, you know, the tread lightly version of the need to tell more of the Michael Jackson story in some ways, you know, the needs to, you know, make sure some stuff gets addressed in some certain ways. But, you know, again, just for the, you know, I guess for the casting of it as well, too, you know, there's a second movie opportunity. But, you know, I'm assuming that they wrote kind of it together and then kind of separate up the production, obviously, around a little bit there as well, too. But, you know, I guess, you know, maybe we need to consider Morris Chestnut in the great football player actors of all time. You know, obviously, as a football player, that does open him up here. Pause for, you know, and obviously we tread lightly say, you know, open him up for some, in the movie sense of things, you know, there are the, and again, I'm throwing the word out there carefully, hopefully, but, you know, there are the jokes, there are the comments that are made about the situation that he does get himself into, you know, later on in the movie, and how, you know, a USC running back might handle himself in that type of situation. But let's be honest, I don't, you know, do we need to do a combine versus, you know, a bullet versus a USC running back? Like, most of the time the bullet's going to win. It is what it is. You know, Reggie Bush was pretty fast, but, you know, even he's zigzagging down an alleyway. You know, it's really only up to the aim of the person there. But, you know, either way, hey, yo, Chad, I guess, you know, that was probably not the way to take it. But either way, for, you know, just the point is, you know, the point is give Morris Chestnut a break. Give Ricky a break at the end of this one. I think Ricky probably gets a little too much hate at the end of this one. You know, was stepping on a hot take early, Chad, but I just thought of that now. So, you know, it is what it is. But either way, for Ricky, you know, we will circle back to that, because he does get a little bit too much hate, for sure, especially as the victim. But either way, what are we saying for NFL players in movies? And I guess he does kind of get to have the NFL career. Like, he gets the NCAA. Well, I guess he doesn't actually have the NCAA career, unfortunately, but he has the amateur career, at least in this movie. And then his talent was enough, obviously, to get him to USC. So when he is recast as Lance Sullivan in The Best Man, you know, it's only a natural fit. Now, the Coastal situation is different. Hey, yo, Chad, and we got to figure out whose highlights they are actually showing here. Because no disrespect to Morris Chestnut, but this is, like, legit, like, they're showing, like, LaDainian Tomlinson's high school highlights at this point. I guess I don't know if Tomlinson probably wouldn't quite have been in high school in 01 at this point. Do we have to do 2001 running back recruiting rankings? Hey, yo, let's see what we got here, chat. Honestly, that wouldn't be a bad thing to look up, though, because we do have the recruiting scene going, or, you know, going right now as well, too. 2001 running back recruit rankings. And running backs, or 2001, hey, what am I thinking? I'm thinking that for Tomlinson in the draft. 1991. And I don't know what newspaper articles we'll be able to dig up online here and see what we have going on. It says for a 1991 comprehensive ranking compiled, blah, 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 blah. I don't think 24/7 Sports is going to have anything on this, to be honest. It is what it is. Unfortunately, they did not clutch up at the 91 recruiting rankings. Maybe we might have to go to Gemini, chat. I hate to say it, but, there is no other way to get a random guess, I guess, at this point. The draft class, I feel like we could try to time it out and take some random guesses, but we might as well just see what we have going on here for the ability to get this list up. What, who were the best RB recruits of 1991? Hey, yo. So let's see if we can go all the way back 35 years. The movie might be a little easier to access than this list. That is for sure. But we do have some names. Hey, yo, college football recruiting class. Players who finished their high school careers late 1999, signed in February 1991, featured some of the most dynamic and highly anticipated running backs of the decade. Hey, yo. So the top running back recruits of the 1991 class primarily headlined US Today's All-USA selection list. Included Marquette Smith. Marquette Smith, and I guess, again, we're just reading this off of the Gemini, but Lake Howell High School, Winter Park, Florida, went to Florida State, Central Florida, was named the 1990 USA Today High School Offensive Player of the Year. Is widely considered the crown jewel of the 1991 running back class after his 2,409-yard season, 32 touchdowns his senior year. Though his time at Florida State was derailed by injuries, he transferred to UCF, where he posted back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So, I mean, chat, hey, yo, was Ricky outrunning Marquette Smith in 1991? 24-9. I guess they don't ever say respectfully to Ricky that he's like an USA Today high school player of the year. Like, you could be recruited by USC and, not necessarily have to be that. But speaking of Cali, we have Napoleon Kaufman. Hey, yo, chat, it's a bummer none of these names kind of went to the NFL level. Number 3 here on the list, Steven Pitts is not bad as well, too. But Napoleon Kaufman from Lompoc High School, Lompoc, California, a breathtaking track and field star as well as a football phenomenon. Kaufman chose the Washington Huskies over several powerhouse programs. He lived up to every ounce of the hype, helping Washington secure the national title in 2001, becoming the school's all-time leading rusher and enjoying a 6-year career with the Oakland Raiders. Shout out to Napoleon Kaufman. So is this the Ricky model right here? Does Ricky basically have Napoleon Kaufman's career at USC? Like, I mean, again, obviously, maybe the Washington running back class is a little bit different. I'm not going to lie. Like, I may not be able to recall all of the, data from all the players, but I don't know what the list of great Washington running backs is, to be honest. But, either way, just to do, is that like the LeBron chant? Napoleon Kaufman? He's gets a championship and breaks the records and is just like the best thing that the school has ever had. Pause. Hey, yo. Like, that is obviously, like we're saying, pretty impressive there. Shout out. So he might be in contention for best running back of the class as well, too. Rushing stats. Let's see what we have here for the University of Washington. Myles Gaskin is now the leader. Oh, he's been passed a couple times at this point. Chris Polk with 40-49. Hey, yo, not doing what everybody said Bam should have done and, drop down on the 1-yard line right before passing Napoleon Kaufman. But Myles Gaskin with 5,323 yards. So what are you going to do? It's too many other attempts there. And 57 touchdowns as well, too, for Gaskin. Hey, yo, 33 for Kaufman, 26 for Polk. Bishop Sankey, number 4 on the list. NFL flirtation there with Sankey for a second. Salvin Ahmed also kind of, had some NBA or NBA, AO, NFL Fantasy Wire flirtation stuff there for a while, but I don't know if he's around in the same way anymore. Steven Pitts, I guess, is number 3. Like I said, went to Penn State, rounding out the first team All USA backfield for the class of '91. Pitts was highly physical and highly scouted prospect out of New Jersey who committed to Penn State, and he became a key contributor in a loaded Penn State offense. Honorable mentions: the next 1991 headline class, Stephen Davis from Spartanburg High School, South Carolina. If you're looking for a standout player during the 1991 football season who signed in early '92, Stephen Davis was the consensus #1 recruit in the country. He won the 1991 USA Today Offensive Player, went to Auburn, and became a 3-time NFL Pro Bowler. Hey, yo. So these guys are killing it, Chad. Hey, these guys are crushing. Shout out. Stephen Davis over here, Napoleon Kaufman, having some successful NFL run, and I feel like, again, just because they don't go down as the Hall of Fame type stuff. Like 18th overall pick, like that's a pretty good career. 9th in Heisman voting in 1994. Hey, yo. Like, hey, Mike, who do you want more than Napoleon Kaufman? I tell you what, you have a name like Napoleon Kaufman, I follow him into battle as a running back. Normally your Napoleon's leading the charge, but this Napoleon, he's good at following his blockers. I tell you what, Mike. Who else is running in this class better than Napoleon Kaufman? Oh, we got a couple Hall of Famers. Only 2-time Super Bowl champion Terrell Davis and Curtis Martin were in this draft, but multiple picks way later. I mean, Curtis Martin 3rd round and Terrell Davis 6th round. So, again, the whole league missing multiple times. Tyron Wheatley was the 17th pick in this draft, and I guess he did also gain more yards than Napoleon Kaufman as well. But Steve McNair almost caught him. Cordell Stewart at quarterback, almost there as well too. But so he's actually might be kind of like sneaky the worst of the best running backs here. I guess Rashawn Salam, 1162, is obviously kind of low there as well. But yeah, shout out Napoleon Kaufman. Yeah, winning the Name of the Day award. That is for sure. But hey, yo, chat, we gotta dip. Hey, yo, what do we have to do, chat? I tell you what, pause. Hey, yo, we don't have to pause. We do have to pause, but we also had to pause what we said there. So hopefully that's making sense. This is chat. Is this like a new? Who did Who's on First? Pause. Hey, yo, see, we're back at it again. Abbott and Costello. Is this the next Abbott and Costello bit? The pause. What do we have to do? Pause. No, you have to pause. Maybe they just kind of go around with that. I don't know. But we do have to adjust some settings in here real quick. Dial in the studio temperature real quick. Hey, yo, chat. Is this a weak move? It is what it is. I'm a hoodie man, so no hoodie right now. We gotta make some fixes. It is what it is. We'll be right back. All right, chat, we're back. Hoodie acquired. Hey, yo, I guess I don't know what happened to the Boys in the Hood background here. Let's go with, I guess, hey, you know, not going for the hoodie pun there with the attire, but you know, the problem is we just gotta lock in because it's getting late, and typically this is a movie we throw on and we're like, okay, you know, let's end the day, get into bed, you know, throw on Boys in the Hood, and if we pass out, you know, we'll just wake up in the morning. It's a classic, you know, pass out movie. I don't want to say, you know, I feel like that'd be the worst thing in the world to say, you know, I fall asleep to this movie, but it's not anymore. I feel like you get what we're saying when we say that. It's not like I was in the theater and dozed off to this movie when it was playing. You know, we're not saying that. But this is a classic, you know, it's like, oh, this is an all-time you fall asleep to this movie. No, this is an all-time comfort movie. That's the point. The point is, you know, it's basically like what movie is as comfortable to have is like the pillow that you sleep with almost is basically what this movie is in a sense. You know, what are the pillow movies? Hey, yo, that might be a little bit of a different that I think that's a different list. We were, you know, we were stumbling on something profound and then we went back to something sexual, but either way, you know, they can kind of exist in the same way. Actually, they probably should. You know, if it all works out. But either way, for what are we saying? For you know, I guess, hey, yo, chat. What I was gonna say is typically when I watch this movie, you know, I'm watching it in like bits and pieces, or like I'm saying, I'm, you know, got it on late at night. I'm passing out like 30 minutes in, 20 minutes in. So, you know, I just like naturally the biological clock. Like if I just fall asleep on the rest of the live stream, it just is what it is. Like that's just because it's just like we're saying, this movie is, you know, Ayo pause a pillow movie. It is what it is. It's NyQuil, chat. It's the movie automatically. You just like it's just the habit to watch in that type of scenario. We got a little Fast and Furious type vibe. The cars side by side, you know, the camera work. We got like a, you know, hey, yo, I guess we probably can't call it race wars in this movie. You know, it's definitely got a little bit of a different connotation. And Fast and Furious, they get away with calling it that because it's so heavily leaned into the cars there that, you know, it's just, that's like so heavily the focus. But, you know, at least the, you know, the car hangout situation, obviously, you know, is fun there. But what are we saying for? We just had the Fishburne scene where he's given the speech to the community as they start to gather around. And, you know, obviously one of the handful of just so many iconic, you know, Fishburne scenes. Going back in, you know, listening to the Rewatchables pod on this one, you know, they talk about how, you know, Fishburne probably should have been nominated for this. But, you know, you just think about what his career has become as well, too. And I went to his IMDb on the app, and they have like the movies that you're most known for, and it's only 4. So sometimes, you know, you get a great actor like Fishburne, and it's like, you know, which 4 movies are you gonna pick? But the 4 movies that they have on as known for right now as an actor are The Matrix, 2011's Contagion, which did he get like nominated for that or something? Am I missing something? You know, Contagion, it's a 70 on Metacritic, like it's pretty good. But, you know, ratings and stuff, Soderbergh, like, I mean, yeah, you know, respect to Contagion. But Lawrence Fishburne's number 2 most known for movie, you know, again, is he even most billed, chat? He's not even top billed on this. Like, I'm just reading on IMDb. I'm not, like, super familiar with Contagion. I mean, I know about it because of, obviously, you know, it being brought up with COVID again. But I can't say that I've actually watched it. But either way, you know, we got Matt Damon, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Tien Yu Choi, Hose Josie Ho, Daria Strokis, Griffin Kane, Yoshaki Kobayashi, and then Lawrence Fishburne. And then Josh Hawks, Monique Gabriel Kerman. So he's like doing his classic 2010s Lawrence Fishburne cameo at this point. You know, again, I don't know if it's his most second known movie at this time, but it's his second on IMDb. His third most known movie is 21. Inspired by real events about people, 21 is about 6 MIT students who become trained to be experts in card counting, in blackjacking, and subsequently took Vegas casinos for $1 million. So it's basically about Chauncey Billups. But again, 21. You're telling me 21 is one of the 4 movies that people talk about when they mention Lawrence Fishburne, and again, not even top billed in this. So maybe I need to go back and double check and make sure IMDb's correctly billing the people here. But it does also have, again, both Matrix movies. So it's The Matrix, Contagion, 21, The Matrix Reloaded are the 4 Fishburne movies that you have on his known for here on IMDb. But and again, like I'm saying, I think that is representative of, if anything, more so what his career became later on, which is, in some ways like a good pivot for an actor to make. And I guess we did talk about that earlier with Nia Long, or just the different careers that the, options obviously that the people have. Again, there is like do you say quote unquote some of the more serious stuff that could be done. It is what it is. It does seem like Fishburne kind of gravitated towards some of the box office stuff and gravitated towards some of the roles. And again, there are obviously iconic roles in here as well too that aren't just purely box office. Like again, The Matrix is not just purely box office. It became box office because it was so successful, but Fishburne in that movie, he is box office because he's Fishburne, but again, it's also a really good performance as well too. It's not just hey yo chat, what do the kids say? It's not just him getting the bag per se. Yeah, we may have to go back and revisit some of those later Matrices just to double check and see what's going on there. But yeah, I love Batman versus Superman. We didn't do the 10-year anniversary for it because I'm still a little iffy on doing the 10 to the 5 to 10s. They have to be like really really great. And Batman versus Superman is in like the really really conversational within the last 10 years. Like it is a good conversation, but we give it some time. It is what it is. Maybe we might have to have a guest for that. That's a special movie. It is what it is. We have to have a guest, but we don't know anybody else that likes it, so that's a problem. But basically, of course, up until the Legend of Bobby Z. He's in Mystic River in 2003. He's in Biker Boys in 2003 as well too. What a year for Lawrence Fishburne. Biker Boys, The Matrix Reloaded, and Mystic River, and Matrix Revolutions. So they did the 2 movies for The Matrix in 2003, I guess, as well. So 4 movies for Fishburne. And I guess, all 4 of those are super rewatchable. Don't sleep on Biker Boys. I guess I don't know too much about the Matrix movies there, but don't sleep on the Biker Boys. As well. You say you don't know too much about the Matrix. The first one's a classic, but I can't say I'm always going, rerunning the franchise. But I guess the Matrix is like his Mission Impossible for Tom Cruise, where that's where he kind of does the pivot a little bit into the acting. And chat, we just don't give up on us now. Don't give up on us now. Oh, chat, are we gonna lose it? Oh no, chat. Obviously there's so much of the movie that's great that's left as well too. Oh, chat, do we have to take another IT timeout? We hate that this is become such a snag at this point, but we'll give it another attempt here and get her going again. We should be able to fire it back up here and see what is going. Okay, chat, almost back. We just gotta pause, get it to the right. Hey, always the issue. Just gotta get it to the right spot, and we will be good to go and get this fired back up. Because we had, Cuba Gooding Jr., of course, obviously his reaction after, a tough interaction there, but just, his amazing acting levels as you see the emotion build throughout the course of the scene. And we could obviously, have a whole Cuba Gooding Jr. conversation as well too. Speaking of where the careers went as well, there's definitely some weird roles in there. That's for sure. But obviously again has arguably up there with in some ways, maybe the best filmography. I guess, we did say, who did we say had the best filmography? I guess we weren't, but we did say at the time not Lawrence Fishburne was included in that, right? And not Bassett. Oh, chat, and we're gonna miss. We can't miss the iconic scenes. Oh no, we have to do Boys in the Hood Part 2 on Tuesday live stream. We might have to, because it is also getting late here in the Midwest. It is what it is. We did a Rem and Sam morning show last time, so Rem and Sam late night here this time. Hey, yo, chat, it is what it is. That'll be the agreement. The agreement is part 2. Tune into the Tuesday live stream, because we have part 2 of the Boys in the Hood. Hey, yo, we've got the ending. I mean, the ending is got some of the best, again, obviously, I guess, best is a loose word to throw out there. But some of the most iconic rewatchable scenes, and just the energy obviously changes here. It becomes a much more dramatic, last 40 minutes versus, again, the very, coming of age, setting the tone, the character building that you get through the first hour 15 here. And then obviously the real life traumatic pivot that you get as, things start to go down in in this movie. And obviously things are happening throughout, the course of the whole film, but as the tension in the movie really starts to ratchet up. I mean, it is almost in some ways a bit of a natural breaking point, but I guess it's what it has to be tonight, Chatter. We have to, I not gonna lie, I did go to the DVD store today to get it, but see, the problem is I go to the DVD store day of and don't give myself any leniency to find it. So, it's like, okay, if the one DVD store nearby doesn't have it day of, then I'm out of luck. So, again, maybe I need to be stopping it a little more often, check the schedule ahead of time. But there is one, we did just get a new DVD store in town as well, too. A nice little DVD, vinyl, CD. It's actually more DVDs, CDs, but they've got some vinyls in there as well, too. But good DVD selection, and I'd say it seems a lot more like stock stuff, if that makes sense. But like I would imagine they would have Boys in the Hood there. Again, the one that I'm thinking of is more resell. So, and this might be resell as well too. I don't know. They just got a better, starting, because it's pretty new. But if they just got like a better starting, bunch or something like that. But with the resell stuff, again, it might obviously you don't have to guarantee to find anything. They haven't had blue chips for 6 months, so we're still waiting, or they just it just gets bought right away. But they did have Sicario today, and I left it there because it was like $8. So I was like, oh, Chad, I was like, the problem is, you go to they might have it at the other one for like $3. So I might have to go over there, get Sicario and Boys in the Hood. So we'll update you Tuesday when we're back with that part 2, Boys in the Hood. We'll see you then. Until then, enjoy the time. Watch the movie. Obviously, familiarize. Obviously, if I guess it's a classic, so the familiarity is there, I'm sure. So just an excuse to continue watching it, and we'll see y'all Tuesday for part 2. Peace.